This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Yes, we can go ahead now.
All right, it is 6:02. I will now call to order the April 10th meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. This meeting is being recorded. This meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission will be conducted in person and simultaneously via remote participation online to the greatest extent possible. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the City of Easthampton website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Should an interruption occur in which the online meeting ends abruptly, both the in-person and online meetings will not be restarted, and all agenda items will be automatically continued to the next scheduled meeting. Kathy, do you have other housekeeping matters to cover?
Yes, if there are any technical difficulties, just as you said, the meeting the meeting ends abruptly, the hearing will be automatically administratively continued to April 24th meeting at 6 p.m. and will not resume tonight. Please contact the conservation agent at 413-529-1463 or conservation@easthamptonma.gov for any questions. All participants are asked to remain muted until it is time for public comments. Participants should use the raise hand function or send a chat to the agent. Please state your name for the beginning of any comments. Please do not utilize the chat function unless it is necessary to indicate to the agent that you would like to make a comment. All private chats are generated into a transcript that will be included in the public record and are not in fact private. Discussion within the chat is prohibited. And with that, we can carry on to the first item when you're ready.
All right, are there any public concerns, non-agenda items? Is anyone here for an item that is not specifically listed on the agenda as a topic already?
Yeah. Yes,
Oh, you are on the agenda.
Yes.
It's under general business.
It's under general.
Yeah.
business.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is this when we get to speak about concerns about the project?
If it's a topic that is the project that's on the agenda, then no, I'm only asking right now for concerns that have nothing to do with items on the agenda. If you have something different.
Anyone have any? Oh, we have agendas too.
All right, so hearing none, we'll move on to public hearing. Our first of which is continued from 3/27 for a notice of intent filed by Furrow Engineering on behalf of Tasty Top Development LLC for a new mixed-use commercial and residential development with associated stormwater management system at 93, 95, and 97 Northampton Street, map 128, lots 112, 113, and 114, Mass DEP file number 1510323. And I will note that the commission received some additional materials around 3 or 4 this afternoon. So I can say for myself, I've not had a chance to review those. I don't know about anyone else on the commission. So if the applicant could start out, obviously we'll want to review those in detail. But if the applicant could start out by just summarizing for us what was in the newly submitted materials. Please introduce yourself again for the record. You're welcome to come up here if there's more space and that would be more comfortable.
One personal space over
My name is Luke Showalter. I'm with Furrow Engineering. I'm representing Tasty Top LLC, who's the applicant. Not too much new information to present. We were really waiting on being able to schedule the test pits. So we were able to perform 7 test pits last week. Mostly in the area of the proposed infiltration basins. And between the test pits that were performed last week and test pits that have been done previously, we performed 3 test pits at each location of the 3 infiltration basins. The new test pits confirmed the information that we had, including the soil types in those areas, as well as the depth of the groundwater. And then the test pit logs have been added to the plans that you received today. Test pit plan TP1 has been revised to include those logs on that plan. There's really no other new information to go over, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Okay. Are there any questions from the commission at this point? Right, so I know last time we had discussed or mentioned that we were waiting for the new test pit information before we put out the RFP for peer review, which we wanted to do. So I think at this point, we are probably ready to move forward with issuing that RFP. Unless anyone on the commission feels differently. All right, and Cassie had circulated a draft of what she intended to put out for the RFP because the commission had a chance to review. Any comments or questions? Has the applicant had a chance to review that? I believe that was sent to them as well, right, Cassie? Any comments or questions on the RFP?
No comments.
All right.
Just a question before we move on. I didn't know if that, I know you had some questions about the previous plan iteration. Is it appropriate to talk about that now or before or after the RFP, or I'm not sure if people had.
Sorry, you had questions?
Commissioner Aldis.
I had questions with the plantings, erosion control notes. I have a lot of questions. Is this something we can do at the next meeting or?
So we can approach it in a couple ways. We know that we're going to put the project out for peer review. So we could choose to wait and hold additional questions until we've got the peer reviewer on board and we've seen their comments and we can weigh everything together. Or we can go ahead and work through some of the other questions now. I'm fine either way. What would the commission like to do?
I mean, I'm okay with waiting as long as I can present these questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would it be important for the peer reviewer to know your questions? Or are they already written down and submitted somewhere so that they would be reviewed by the person anyway in the comments?
My questions are about fencing, the basins, erosion control notes, the rain gardens.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's, even if we don't have a detailed discussion of them necessarily, let's get them on the record because the peer reviewer will be looking at all of the discussions and notes so far and thinking about all of the issues that we've raised. So I think it would be a good idea to at least have those on the record.
So you want me to?
Yes.
Okay. So there were questions on, for the trees. And also the city engineer also asked about, if you were saving any mature trees, what type of trees they were. And your number 13, where you have the calculation for the amount of trees to be removed. Is this a total in one area that is being removed or segments of undeveloped areas added together? It was your comments from March 13th.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, there are some mature trees along Northampton Street that were called out to be left to remain. To be honest, I don't know what the species of those trees are. I can find out for you though and get you that information. And then there's also in the community area and the eastern portion of the site, the majority of the site is already cleared, so there's not many trees to preserve in that area, but a section of where the community garden is shown is currently forested, so we will do some selection of some trees before any clearing happens in there, and they'll be flagged to remain. Can you repeat your question about number 13?
So where it says the trees, the wooded area to remain, is this a total in one area for trees, or are these segments of undeveloped areas that you're adding together? Remaining trees, is this one section, or do you have clusters of?
That would be the total wooded area that will remain on the entire site after all development is completed.
Okay. Okay, and these will be marked? The trees will be marked? That you're
The
saving?
majority of this wooded area is outside the limit of work. So they're not specific trees, but it's just a forested area that won't be touched.
Okay. And will plantings be equivalent to the removal of trees?
No. No, there'll be more clearance, and we'll be planting of trees, but
And then one of the questions I had originally were about plantings. Your original, overall site planting, the landscape plan, you have 100 red maples. Or you said you would use approved native species. Is there a reason why you didn't, vary with, specific trees, or are you gonna plant these red maples all over the entire? Cause you have the hawthorn, the winterberry, witch hazel, and the red maple. But that was the extent, so I didn't know if you were gonna plant them all around the site, or you were gonna put in more of a variation.
yeah, the majority of the trees that we planted will be red, are proposed to be red maple, and they'll be scattered throughout the site, as shown on the landscaping plan. I believe they should be called out on.
Okay. And your arborvitaes, are you using them as shade trees or as a shrub hedge?
Yeah,
Screening tree.
yeah, so that would be to the west, I believe, between the residential properties and the commercial properties, and yeah, just be used as a screening tree.
Okay. And you had listed the Nana juniper mound, green mound, and we had asked about finding something more native for the area, and we were told that you would look into it, and what came back was you have pasture juniper, but I couldn't find pasture. It says common juniper, so you went with another juniper. Is that considered native?
Yeah, so it's listed as a native species in the Mass DEP stormwater standards, and there's a list in there that I could send you if you want to take a look at that.
Okay. Around the Roots facility and buildings 12, I think it's the commercial mixed use, there are very little to no plantings in the landscaping plan for the south. Is there a reason why you don't have as many or very little plantings in that area?
In the south corner you're talking about? Yeah, so that's going to be a lot of commercial contractor shops. So the paved area in that area is needed for the truck turnarounds. We did as much plantings as we could. That includes wall fill, maintaining adequate space for turning around the trucks and space that the contractors would need.
In the rain garden, so in the rain garden, you have the same plants that you're planting around the entire property. Are these rain garden type plants, or would you be considering different plants within the rain gardens?
They are rain garden. They're recommended plantings for rain gardens straight out of the stormwater handbook. And again, I'll send you that list of plantings so you can see that.
Okay. You want me? Okay. So for your seed mix, you have the premium seed mix and you have the conservation seed mix. And at our previous meeting, I had asked Mr. Nietzsche if we could add in pollinator seed mix. Is that possible also for the area?
We can definitely look into that, yeah.
Okay. So in your notes for the rain gardens, number 4, you have construction sediment should not be permitted to enter the rain garden. Can that be reworded to shall not?
Not sure what that's from the,
It was number 4 in the rain garden notes.
and that's on the 3.4, see 3.4.
Is this the response for that?
Yes, no, this is on the map.
Oh, no.
Okay, yeah, we'll change that for you.
It also says you have an irrigation system. What is your irrigation system?
Lawn irrigation, just in the, probably the premium scenic areas.
Okay.
Is that gonna be an automated sprinkler system?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, and so I had said you had the Nana Green Mound. It's still listed on your planting list. That was the one you were going to remove.
The
juniper?
large building planting list or the overall?
This is on the overall landscape site planting list.
Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Okay. And for the flowering dogwood, you have no numbers listed anywhere on the mapping. So you're no longer using the flowering dogwoods.
If the quantity is zero, then no, it might have just been left on there.
Okay. Your arborvitaes, there is no number listed for amounts in the building planting list. And also for the rain garden notes, who will be doing the inspecting and repairs to the rain garden?
Is this during operation after everything's been established?
Yes.
It will be the maintenance crew that's handling the landscaping.
Okay, so you're hiring a maintenance crew that will tend to this?
Was there a maintenance plan for that?
There is a maintenance plan that's submitted, the operation maintenance plan. So we can highlight that in there also, that the rain gardens are included in checking and comparing and seeing.
You also have, you're gonna remove the litter and the debris. So that will need to be taken off-site and disposed of properly. Anything diseased or litter. And how will you treat diseased plants? With chemicals?
We probably leave that up to the maintenance crew. They would know what to do in that. If it was too far gone, it would be removed and replaced.
Was this something that was in, I'm not sure,
It's in the notes for the rain gardens. It says that,
the maintenance?
number 4, yes.
Okay,
They'll treat the diseased. And I want to know how it will be treated. And if they move or replace it, it should be removed off-site.
Mhm.
And of course, we have removing invasives, which should be disposed of properly off-site. And for this snow storage, how far is the rain garden from the snow storage? I think it was building 9. You have a snow storage location as opposed to one of the rain gardens.
We can get that information for you. Take a look at the landscape.
do you know what sheet that was on?
They just did one of those snow storage.
What sheet of the rain garden, Shawna?
It's 3.4.
It's, oh, okay. Like that.
That's just one building. Where are the locations shown?
So in general, those rain gardens will be located in the back of the buildings, but there may be obstructions in some entrances. In this case, they'll be, most likely on one of the sides of the building. So they haven't been shown on the overall landscape plan, but they're shown on the flow and large plan.
And then, is it C-3.2? How close is the snow storage to the buffer zone area or critical areas?
The snow storage should be shown on C 3.2 in relation to the buffer zone. Because if you want to pull up the plan,
I can.
point it up.
Yeah. hold on just a second here. I'm sorry, what sheet did you say it was on? Excellent.
Yep, see,
Perfect, thank you.
building.
Just give me a second here. Okay.
So it's gorgeous, yeah.
Okay.
So building 9 is C dash 3.1.
That's where this needs to be, this is 9.
Over the C 3.1.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, snow storage area.
Oh, you're referring to this?
Yeah.
Storage area here. Yeah, we can highlight it. Partially on the buffer zone.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but that area is noted on the plans. All areas of snow storage are going to be graded towards the paved area so that it'll be captured by the treatment train and the stormwater management system. And that water will be treated before it's discharged.
So in light of that, are you still planning to move it or? Okay.
If the commission would like us to, we can.
It's gonna move, go on the sidewalk and get it up to the small catch basin and then hence the detention basin.
So I'm a little unclear. Are you saying that it's just shown going into that buffer zone, but it's not really going into the buffer zone
I'm sorry.
in reality?
This is where we're proposing to store this snow. It is within the buffer zone, but we're just pointing out that this area will be graded so that when the snow melts, it melts into the paved area, which then will direct it to a catch basin and be treated through the stormwater treatment train and discharged into the detention basin.
But it's still in the buffer zone.
It's partially shown in the buffer zone. And if you would like us to show that outside of the buffer zone, we're happy to do that.
Well, you keep saying shown in the buffer zone. I'm just not clear if it's in the buffer zone or not.
It's currently in the buffer zone.
Okay.
Yes.
There's, there's at the end of your list.
The other question was about fencing. Are you gonna be putting any fencing around the basins?
Yeah, so that's proposed fencing, between residential buildings and the basins. So the basins that are close to residential buildings, there's a fence between.
Between, but not around?
Yeah, so the fencing will go to the tree line. And that, the purpose of that is to allow for some access, but also access by wildlife in and out of the basin. So for instance, here, the fencing is between the residential apartment and the basin, but then it continues to the tree line and ends there, but also with gated access to the basin.
And how far off the ground is the fencing?
Fencing goes to the ground, but a tree side of the basin will be open to wildlife, so there'll be plenty of access into the basin.
So if it's only one side, do we need to have it raised at all? Or if there's allowable passage around it, is that reasonable?
We haven't encountered that before, I don't think. I'm inclined to say, at least looking at this one, it seems fine with the amount of open edge that you would have.
And this is all the basins? There's only one side? Fencing?
The basins that are adjacent to the residential buildings.
We would prefer not to put any fence up. I don't think these are dangerous basins whatsoever, but In a lot of communities, there's no fences around the gender basins.
So why are you proposing something?
It was a comment from somebody.
I believe it's.
Is that a request from the planning department?
Board, someone requested it.
Okay. Yeah, with it open on one side, I think I'm fine
Sure.
with it as it is. That's
I'm
all.
okay with it.
And then, you have something about trash racks with is it with the dumpsters or what exactly is a trash rack and how does that work?
It's just,
Yeah, so you might have seen on the detail for the outlet structure, and that's basically just a cage around the outlet into the outlet structure to keep trash from flowing in there, to catch it so it can be seen and cleaned out.
it's more of a terminology thing. It's not actual trash we're anticipating. We're thinking logs and leaves and stuff like that. So water can still get into the outlet structure. So it's a kind of a misnomer, the term trash rack.
And then it's cleaned out
Yeah,
so often and,
It gets cleaned out when the detention basin gets cleaned out, so so it can operate properly with the outlet structure.
okay. My only other question is with the lighting, I don't know if I bring this up for the crossing area, but where the new bridge is, you're putting in a pole lighting in that particular area. And I wasn't sure if that was, because of the area, if pole lighting is acceptable for that particular spot.
What's the location again, Deb? I'm sorry.
It's near the new crossing.
I see.
I think it's at H12. Mounted light pole, H12 by the crossing.
What sheet is it on?
I believe it's the C8 series or
C-9.2. I'm going by your last, revision.
That was it right there.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, here. Okay.
yeah, so the pole.
Thank you. Each 12?
Right there, that's the one you're speaking of.
Yep, H12. I believe you have one or two there, but I didn't know if that was appropriate for the area,
For the what?
for that area,
Like for the wildlife?
for the crossing.
Or that you mean by appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty standard. I don't think there's anything that doesn't allow for lighting, especially for safe vehicle passage over the crossing.
Can the style of that light be such that the light would be directed within the pavement and not into the surrounding stream areas? I don't know what style you're looking at currently.
Yeah, they all should all be a downcast lighting. The lighting should be listed in the luminaire schedule, which would have no terminology. Yeah, it would all be downcast onto the pavement.
Yeah, off of the pavement, you could see it.
It's hard to read the numbers.
Yeah, it's 0.2. Upwards behind it is 2.8, but it is intended to be on the roadway. Yeah, it is.
And the light pole's only 12 feet high.
These aren't high powered lights. They're just enough to. It's very low foot candles. What are the watts on that?
I'll scroll down just a little bit, Cassie.
Yeah, oh, here we go.
100 watts. LED light.
It's 3,000 K. Is that warm?
It's pretty warm.
Warm.
I just have one more, do you want to?
Go for it, come on.
Well, you've all been so patient, I appreciate it. So you also have, a pool house with a pool. And I want to know how far from the resource area is this? Because you will be using chemicals for the pool and possibly storing chemicals on site. So how far from that area is, any of the resource areas or restoration areas?
Storage.
Yes,
How far is the
there's a
storage
pool
gonna be?
house,
Yes. Well, I'd say it's about 200 feet to the buffer zone. So another 200 feet to
The buffer's on the other side. It's, you know, from the actual pool itself, maybe like 75 feet. But the chemicals and stuff will be stored inside that building, the pool shop there.
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions from the commission at this point?
What's the latest, date for the, plan?
4:10.
There's a today's date right here. Just sit right here, if I look at them.
And it's on,
Yeah, you got my email.
I don't know, it was able to get attachments, latest revised thing.
Are there,
You got the link in the email.
if the commission's all set, are there comments and questions from the public at this point?
I received some written comments. I know there's likely a lot of in-person comments. I just wanted to ask the chair if you had a preference for doing the written comments first or in person, and then we also surely have them online.
Let's do the live comments first, and then we'll go to written. So I saw some hands. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Lucille Costick. I live on Plymouth Avenue. I'm in the neighborhood, which is in between project and the Manhan River. We're on the downslope. I looked up the, water flow on the map that where all the water, how it flows throughout the property. And most of it goes right toward our neighborhood in the Manhan River. They are a much higher elevation. We've been at our house there on Plymouth Avenue for 53 years. And when we bought our house, we didn't know when we bought it that there was water in the basement, but it's fieldstone foundation. We're one of the older houses among other old ones in that neighborhood. And I'm not the only one that gets water in the basement. Paul Corella, who's here, he lives between me and the river on Mill Street, and he gets it a lot worse than me. So we are very concerned, and we feel that this project is covering and hardscaping too much of the area above us. And it's only gonna increase our water in the basement problem, which I wrote to the boards in a letter. I don't know how we could try to get the developer to reduce the amount of hardscaping. I looked at his plans or their plans, and the whole area, the big area closest to our neighborhood at the ends of Plymouth Avenue and Colonial Avenue, it's like completely, like 90% at least hardscape between one of the larger parking lots and all of the buildings that are on it. I can't really believe that no matter how much filtration they put in, that it's going to take care of all of the water. That's just the parking lot alone that's at the end of Colonial Ave, and I know already they get more water in their basements and yards than even we do, which probably eventually filters down to us. But that parking lot, they're talking about an emergency entrance into Colonial Ave. Now picture it, the parking lot's higher than the street, than Colonial Ave. How do they stop water from coming down and going into and flooding that whole neighborhood even more? And on that note, I looked up stormwater regulations, third section, page 5, article 7, under stormwater management ordinance, section 1276, purpose and authority. Number 5 of objectives states, minimize the volume and rate of stormwater discharged to rivers, streams, reservoirs, lakes, and storm sewers that flows from any site during construction and following development. What is our recourse if you and planning board and all the boards accept, let them do everything they want? What happens if we get increased problems? We've been paying taxes to the town all these years, and we have to be subjected to more flooding possibly. What do we do if the neighborhood starts getting more water and the river, I'm worried about the river and the snow melting. It could have chemicals in the snow, that going into the river also. But on the map of their plans, is there only one detention basin?
No, there are, I'm sure you know the number off the top of your head.
I believe it's five detention basins and 3 infiltration basins.
So there are 8 stormwater basins total.
Well, I know that I saw one at the end of our street, Plymouth Ave. And it's looks like it's situated right near where there's a big ditch at the end of Plymouth Ave. And that's right above the Manhan River, the downslope to the Manhan River. What happens if that, it sounds like all of the water, they're trying to divert it all the way to these detention basins. What happens if we get like a 100-year flood type storm and the detention basin overflows and it all goes down into the river? So that's a big concern of a lot of people in Easthampton, not just myself. And I noticed on the plan also toward the end of the drawings, there's a dam that's drawn. Is this, when I think of dam, it sounds like water's being diverted, or what is the purpose of that dam? There's a culvert, there's the sign to the project, all these different drawings.
I'm looking for it now to figure out what you're.
It's like a very end.
The check dam, perhaps?
I don't know, I just saw a dam in my mind that they're diverting water, so they're probably building where they shouldn't be building.
Is this what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain for the public, please, the 4-bay check dam section detail?
Yeah, so that's located within the detention and infiltration basins. And the purpose of that is to form it's just a small riprap built up line of rocks, essentially. And it forms a steep region sediment 4-bay within the detention basin. So it's called a check dam. It's just holding water in a small area of the detention basin to pre-treat it before it enters into the bigger area of the detention basin. So it's not per se a dam that's the water is supposed to overflow it eventually. It's only a foot tall.
Thank you.
Kathy, can you please, for context, pull up a map so we can get a better sense of where Colonial Ave and Plymouth Ave are relative to the project area?
Yes, hold on just a second. I don't know. Nothing was planned it when I show it. Is that possible?
Show it.
It is on the edge of the plans, but
Okay, well, one thing I can zoom in right now is this part and show you without the details. But you were talking about this area here, right? This is your neighborhood. This is Northampton Street. This is Northampton Street.
It's at the dead end by those warehouses.
Yeah. So
Dead end of Plymouth Ave.
right. So let me see. I can pull up like
Sheet 2 shows the
Sheet 2.
site overview. It doesn't really show the drainage that well.
yeah, it's tricky. So this is the basin of concern, I believe, at the end of the line.
Yeah.
I don't know, the ones that matches. So it should be on the side of the sheet. Is there in fact a basin at the end of Plymouth? And if so, do you know which one it is? I'm having a hard time.
Four.
I think it should be there, but I don't see it actually
It's
shown on
not
the
by,
sheet.
it's not by, it's right up over here.
You can see the limit.
You're standing right in front of it, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Right, okay, it's a little bit further up. It's
Let's
over
see if I
here.
can get to the sheet
Gotcha.
that shows all the basins with it. 3.1, you said?
Just a comment on that retention basin. I'm Jim Seltzer, I live at 24 Mill Street. That's on my property boundary. So anything that comes over that is coming onto my field.
I'm sorry, it's on your property. I didn't hear the thing you said after that.
Boundary.
Boundary, thank you.
Right there.
Okay.
I don't know what setbacks you have.
Right.
For anything, but it's right up against our property. And when we talked earlier about the ditch there, I'm concerned that any overflows coming into that ditch and is washing out my driveway. And that ditch comes down the hill and under a small pipe in the driveway right now and right into the manhand. So any overflow from those detention basins are coming right into the river.
Okay. All right, thank you. So one of the things specifically that we'll be asking the peer reviewer to look at is all of the hydrologic calculations for how much water is coming off the site now and how much is going to be coming off the site afterwards. So that's one of the things we're going to be specifically asking them to peer review and look at. That speaks to the stormwater standard about minimizing the runoff from the site. So that will be one of the things that they're considering and giving us feedback on. And we can also pass on the specific concerns about the outflows from those basins and ask them to take a look at that as well.
I just want to mention, it's very ironic that I said we're worried about the Manhan River. Right above your head on the wall, it says, think more is better. Tell that to the fish. So that really hits the nail on the head.
It does.
I'm not against development. I just wish it wasn't so large and so hard scaled.
Mhm. There were some others on this one. Yep.
Mary Lou Dodge, 4 Lux Avenue. I'm on the board of the National Pond Committee in Easthampton, as well as the board of the Stomach Trust. And both groups are dedicated to protecting the land and the water that makes up Easthampton. Specifically, I'm here to speak for the trees. And that is specifically the about 5 acres of mature trees that the current Sierra Vista construction plans will have cut down to make room for a large development. 5 acres of mature trees, according to estimates from the U.S. Forest Service, absorb and sequester about 14 metric tons of CO2 every year. As per a recent paper by Senior Professor Thomas Fahey at Cornell University Ecology Division, quote, forests in the northeastern United States are counteracting a considerable amount of fossil fuel burning by the cars, slowing down the rate at which greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, that is accumulating in the atmosphere. And unfortunately, Sierra Vista developers are planning to replace hundreds of trees with hundreds of cars. So that's what I'm thinking tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, I'm Susan Grant, 37 Northampton Street. Actually, our house is behind a house on Northampton Street. We're right next to the dam and the old water department building. I just wanted to bring up wildlife. Crossing our yard have been bears, coyotes, bobcats, and lots of other interesting animals that use the Manhan River as a wildlife corridor. And we're really concerned about the proximity of the plan as it stands now to the river. There needs to be a very broad corridor for wildlife so that they can get where they're going. Thanks.
And tell me again, if you would please, where you are relative to the property in question.
We're on the Manhan River, between Northampton Street and the water department, building a brick house that's right on the banks of the river. And there's another house, a clapboard house, in front, between us and the road.
It was 37.
Yeah, well, is it in reference to Mill Street, or are you on the corner on the side of the river? So you're on this side of the river, Mill Street, because that's where the water department was over here.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
And our site
there's a lot of wildlife in that area.
Yeah, but the Manhan cuts right, go back a little. Property there.
Thank you. Were there other comments in the room? I know we have others online. All right, Cassie, do you want to go to the online comments, please?
Yeah. Marty, you can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready.
Marty Klein, Stone Path Lane. Thanks, Cassie. I'm looking at a fact sheet put out by UMass. It's called Road Salt and Trees. And it has various information about how road salt affects trees. And then there's a section, the following common trees are usually severely damaged by road salt. The first tree listed is red maple. How does it make sense to be planting red maples when you're going to have them exposed to road salt from all the paving you're doing? I have another question after that.
Would anyone from the applicant side like to respond to that?
Yeah, I believe road salt has come up previously, and the amount of road salt being used on this development. And the applicant had agreed to use a mix of sand salt with a lower percentage of salt. So we believe that will help significantly.
Have you looked specifically at the salt tolerance of the various plants that have been chosen for the site?
No, not the red maple specifically. We haven't read that document that we referenced. No.
In general, I think it would be wise to look at the salt tolerance of all of the plantings that may come into contact with stored snow or overspray. It's not the word for salt. Overcast, whatever you call them. That's
Close enough.
Marty, you had another question?
Yes, given the amount of lawns that are going to be put in there, it's quite extensive. I don't know the total acreage offhand, but they're going to require a lot of chemicals to be maintained. I would like to know, and hopefully the commission would as well, what's the quantity and what chemicals will be used on a yearly basis? Thank you.
Is that something that's covered in the operations and maintenance plan yet? I don't believe so.
The quantity type is not, what we're proposing is just standard fertilization, like any residential grade fertilizer for the 4-step program type of thing. We'll update it and include it.
Great. Yeah, it'd be helpful if you could spell that out. And perhaps also provide some references for the applicability of that regime in sensitive areas.
Okay.
Marty, was there anything else?
That's it for now, Cassie. Thank you.
No problem at all. Is there anybody else online who would like to make a public comment before then I would switch to the written comments that I've received since the last meeting? Oh, okay. We have Tom Lattenheiser.
Evening, everybody. I'm Tom Latzenheiser, resident of East Street. Thanks to the calling attention commissioners to the landscaping plan. I'm looking at sheet 3 8.0. And just looking at the site planting list, want to focus on those red maples for a minute. It's just that's really the only tree species proposed in and around the buildings. Just seems like a missed opportunity to me. Street maples often, you see sugar maples often have anthracnose and other diseases that causes them kind of to all fall apart at once. So, first rule of smart landscaping is to diversify the species mix. So I would, red maple's a fine tree, but I would suggest mixing it up a little bit so that they don't all suffer from the same fate, especially if there's something wrong with the nursery stock that you miss, when they're installed or a problem with installation and so forth. So that's just one comment. And then following up on the proposed seed mix, first of all, there's a bunch of typos in there. So, probably could use an editor to go through the plan set, but all disturbed areas shall be loamed, prepared, and seeded as follows, specifying 2 seed mixes: a conservation seed mix at 6 pounds per 1,000 square feet, and a premium seed mix at 6 pounds per square feet. Is that the same square footage, or are those different, applied to different areas? Is one question. Didn't seem to be specified. And then secondly, the conservation seed mix, creeping red fescue, crown vetch, tall fescue, and red top. None of those I would consider to be viable conservation seed mix species. All of those species are not native to New England or even North America. Red fescue, red top are both pasture grasses, but they're considered agricultural weeds. Creeping red fescue is a lawn grass, also fairly weedy. So that, I think, just go back to the drawing board on the conservation seed mix. Ernst seeds, our local New England wetland plants, both have, off-the-shelf conservation seed mixes that are actually conservation seed mix. And I guess I would say, your premium seed mix, again, has a couple of those species as well. So just take a look at those, and I really encourage you to think outside of the Scott's box on those things.
Thank you, Tom. So a couple of things. It sounds like revisiting the diversity of species is in order. That was one of Deb's, Commissioner August's comments as well. Taking a look at the seed mixes, and I believe he is correct that the locations for the different seed mixes are not called out. So making sure that that's been detailed and specified so that we can review.
Okay, yeah, they should be shown on the 3.0. CSM and PSM would be scattered throughout the plan, but we can double check that and make sure.
You're right. I do see that there are letters on here, but the areas associated with them are not clearly delineated. So if you could make that more clear on the plan, please.
There's like a line type that's like a dash with circles. I kind of take that to be the separation between the two, but maybe they're not.
We don't separate the two.
Oh, no, actually it's a fence.
Yeah,
It's a
I don't
general
think so.
area.
Yep.
For where the mix would be.
Yep.
But we can delineate the boundaries of that seed mix.
All right. Do we have additional comments online?
Does anybody else in attendance have a comment for this item? Seeing none, if the commission's ready, I can go to the written comments that I've received thus far.
Please, Betsy.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back from the oldest comment to the most recent. First comment was received from Jim Seltzer and Holly Perry of 654 Amherst Road, South Hadley. They also own the property on 24 Mill Street, which will be explained in this letter. Okay, so March 17th, 2023. Dear members of the Conservation Commission, my wife and I own the property on 24 Mill Street. Our property is adjacent to the parcel being considered for the Sierra Vista Commons. We are directly downhill from the proposed development. Our property has a single-family home and farm fields along the Manhan River. The massive scale of the development will forever dramatically ruin the nature of our property. What has been a quiet and rural location will be lost. Our property value will certainly be diminished. We recognize the need for affordable housing, but seriously question the need for this large of a development. While it would provide some affordable housing, the majority of the development is for other commercial and retail buildings and market rate apartments. We strongly urge you not to approve the application or require the developer to significantly downsize the project. The proposed project essentially paves over acres and acres of open land that slopes directly onto our farm fields. It is impossible to imagine how this development will not substantially reduce our ability to farm the fields. It seems certain that pollutants from stormwater runoff or leaching will end up on our property. In addition, the increased saturation in our soil will make it impossible to get farm equipment onto the fields. It also seems inevitable that the wildlife will be threatened. We regularly see bear, deer, coyote, bobcat, woodchucks, skunks, raccoons, and our favorite Charlie the blue heron, to name a few of the species. The fish ladder at the dam was installed to protect fish swimming up the river, but this development is likely to decrease the water quality below the dam. We request you consider the following steps. 1. Complete a reassessment of the stormwater management design by an independent professional. 2. Complete a reassessment of the impact on wildlife from an independent professional. 3. Require the developer to construct a fence along the length of our shared property line to limit public access on our fields. We are concerned about trash blowing onto the fields and people's safety if they trespass onto our property when farm equipment is in use. 4. If you cannot deny the application, please consider withholding approval of the developer's stage 4. This stage includes 3 apartment buildings and 5 commercial, retail, or mixed-use buildings. It represents approximately 45% of the total buildings proposed. Please consider requiring a separate approval process for stage 4 of the development that would only be considered for approval after the initial phases have been completed and occupied. This would still allow for the construction of the majority of the affordable housing units. This separate application for phase 4 would allow the town to reassess impact of the initial development on traffic and the environment, as well as assess the developer's compliance with the plans and maintenance of the systems. We recognize that some of our requests may be the domain of the planning board. This letter will be submitted to them as well. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Jim Seltzer and Holly Perry. Okay. Next comment was received March 26, 2023 from Robert Parent. Cassie, I have not had a chance to review the revised stormwater submittal, but I did look at the latest set of documents with the revision date of March 13th, 2023. A few items of note, most that have been covered in one or more of my previous comment emails. 1, the rain garden shown on sheet C-3.4 has not been incorporated into the drainage, landscaping, or grading plans, so it is unclear what is intended by showing it on sheet C-3.4. Will it be installed at just one building, all buildings? How will it be incorporated in the overall design, etc.? The required, next point, the required grading at the sewer installation shown in the sketch that I attached to my previous message is not reflected on the revised phasing plan. I do not see any way that this line can be installed as part of phase 1 without completing at least a portion of the proposed regrading adjacent to the steep slope and wetland resource area. It should be shown that adequate erosion control measures can be designed and reviewed. Next point, the proposed sediment and erosion control plans must be updated to match the proposed phasing plan and all site disturbance, clearing, regrading, etc. to be completed in each phase of work should be shown on these plans. Please let me know if any questions. Thank you, Bob Parent. Next message was received March 26, 2023. Later in the day is from Robert Parent. See the 317 document that was submitted to the planning board. Note that what was attached was the Jim Seltzer's comment that was just read. Okay, next comment received March 27th, 2023. Robert Parent, proposed working buffers on riverfront area with no agreement from property owner. And this was a forwarded message from Daniel Murphy, a communication of Robert Parents with city engineer Daniel Murphy, in which Robert Parent asked, does anyone know if permission has been received to cross private property to construct the proposed sewer line? I believe the property is owned by James Seltzer. The city city has and believe that it extends to the project limits. I have not seen any reference to this in the project documents. Thank you. Attached is an image of that portion of the plan. Dan Murphy responded, we met with the property owner about the proposed abutting development and sewer, and need for easement came up, but I have no knowledge of any agreement. This message was received Monday, March 27, 2023, later that day. Robert Parent, thanks, Cassie. I may listen in, but I don't plan to be present. My comments below speak for themselves. With regard to the property ownership issue, I don't know how the commission can entertain discussion of improvements on property that have been proposed without the property owner's consent via signature on a WPA Form 3. Based on the March 17, 2023 letter on file with the city, it would appear that the property owner in question is not in favor of the project. Thank you, Bob Parent. Last one. This is April 9th, 2023. Robert Parent. Cassie, recognizing that the Conservation Commission is planning to retain a peer reviewer for this project, I've limited my review of this updated report to identify changes in the narrative portion of this report as compared to the January 30th, 2023 revised report. The updated report is largely the same as previous submittals, with the following changes including: Part 1, slight changes to Table 5, post-development mitigated peak flow rates per storm event. Table 6, summary of peak flow rates per storm event, analysis point 1, and Table 7, summary of peak flow rates per storm event, analysis point 2. Second bullet, Table 5, TSS removal rates was revised to eliminate the credit for TSS removal in deep sump catch basins, although this is still referenced in the response to Stormwater Standard 1. The TSS removal rate for the CDS hydrodynamic separator in Table 5 has been increased to 85%. The footnote to this table has been revised. This submittal, as well as previous submittals, has referenced soil test pit evaluations completed by a certified soil evaluator, although the test pit logs are lacking information regarding soil color using the Munsell system. High groundwater data is provided about the soil logs. It's provided, but the soil logs do not provide any information regarding how the high groundwater was determined. See the following excerpt from 310 CMR 10.103 Part 3 that pertains to the determination of high groundwater elevation in soil test pits. These logs, therefore, appear to be incomplete. 3, that section is quoted. High groundwater elevation shall be determined by A, soil color using the Munsell system, the abundance, size, and contrast of redoxomorphic features, if present. B, one or more of the following methods to supplement A, or when no redox features are present. 1, observation of actual water table during times of annual high water table. 2, the use of USGS wells for correlating comparisons in water tables during times when the water table is not at the annual high range. 3, a department-approved method for determining high groundwater elevation, which incorporates tidal, 3, the department-approved method for determining high groundwater elevation is contained open file report 80-1205 Frimpter. 4, the department-approved method of determining coastal high groundwater elevation, which incorporates tidal fluctuation information as contained in Frimpter and Belfit 1992. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks, Bob Parent. Those are all the written comments I've received since the last meeting.
Thank you, Kathy. So the comment letters and questions regarding the Seltzer property bring up a good point. The plans that we have do not show the grading around the installation of the sewer. And so it's not currently shown that there are any impacts in jurisdictional areas, but without seeing that and knowing how far out you're actually going to have to go, it does actually raise a question of whether the application is administratively complete or if you did need a signature from the abutter. So that's something that we need to see clarified. We need to see that grading shown so that determination can be made.
there's no proposed grading on it. It will be replaced in time.
But you will need to do excavation and movement of soils in order to install that sewer.
Right, but there's no change in the topography existing to propose, so there's no shot. So
Okay, well, we still need to see the area that's going to be impacted to do that work, to know if it infringes on the buffer zone.
You have to go through the old canal work.
do we have to go, is the old canal
That's the
there?
destroyed, that particular section is the destroyed section of the canal work, so it's not. There's nothing there anymore, it's been destroyed.
You'd have to show me that someday. It was a map that, the historic commission had, that they showed it to us.
They reviewed the plan as well.
Or we could go take a walk there and you can show me what you got planned. I'm sorry, I'm just so busy with all the other things. But, we will, absolutely.
Can I make a comment, seeing as how sewers were brought up? There's been a long-standing problem in that whole area of between the back of our house and the river. The sewers are very old. They're probably one of the oldest systems in the town. That was the first mill district there that used the dam for water power. And we've had sewer backup in our basement. Paul has, no, she hasn't. Christine next door to us.
Yeah.
It's deteriorated system. I don't know how that huge project can hook in to an old dilapidated system. It's only going to cause problems. We don't want sewage coming up and going into the Manhan River. The Manhan River is right there alongside Mill Street. That sewer line from that huge project should not be hooking into an old system on Mill Street. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Unfortunately, until the point that there is an impact from the sewer to jurisdictional areas, this board has no bearing on that, but it should be something that the city is looking at, whether there's sufficient capacity in that system. And I believe that the sufficiency of utilities is also something that will be covered under the MEPA review, which is the state's, the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act review process that the applicant will also have to go through. And that covers a number of the things that folks have been bringing up that are not specifically under our jurisdiction.
Thank you.
And public comment is allowed for that MEPA process.
Please.
Yes, and Paul Curl at 10 Mill Street. About the water issue. This winter, I've never had so much water. I've been there since '76. This winter, it's non-stop. I was pumping it out of the house as fast as I could.
Yeah.
Running down the street was making ice all the way down the street. It had not stopped yet, slowing down. I've never had that since I've been there like this. Every time you put in a footing or a foundation, the water goes around it. Anytime somebody does something, it comes through the house. I mean, it comes through between every single house. There's water coming down through, and underneath that's what's on the surface. And what am I gonna do? I get even bored. I mean, it's an old house, but that's what I'm concerned with. Never mind the traffic. We'll just get it over again.
Any further comments at this time?
Well, just Janet Muzzy, 3 Alden Street. I mean, I know the focus is on the end of Colonial and Plymouth, but I'm on Alden, and the water has been flowing through our cellar this winter. And usually the winter would stop and it would just be in the spring. Steady water. So I don't think it's just the ends of some of those dead end streets. I think it's a much broader area.
Thank you. Yes, and I understand that water issues in this part of town have been an issue and an ongoing issue for years. So that's one of the reasons that we're being very careful in reviewing for the stormwater permit, because I know this is an area that has a lot of issues with water.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no further comments. Anything else from the commission after listening to the public comment?
Is it in our purview to ask for a wildlife assessment for any impact in this proposed area?
That is a good question. I have the slider.
Is that just one of the things? Means that's
Kathy, I know this had come up. Did you look into this at all?
No, not the owner discussion. I apologize for that. I know that, I believe it's near the only, my understanding is when it talks about wildlife assessments is near the end of the act underneath the riverfront area. Section, portion of the act. I'm not sure how else it describes it. And I think where we have left it is that there was a question of if the commission, whether the commission had the ability to ask for such a thing, considering that it seems to only be something that the commission is empowered to do if there are riverfront area impacts. I'm not sure if that's correct.
We did submit a letter from with the Mass Fish and Wildlife that stated that there was not an impact to the wildlife.
Yes, so that, thank you. Is that, yes, we did receive, because there are some impacts proposed for the, what's been identified as Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program free air habitat. The project needed to submit their plan to the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program for review, in which a letter was received in response saying that this project would not resolve in a take of the rare and endangered species. I think that the nuance here is that what Commissioner August is asking for is for generally other wildlife beyond those rare and endangered species.
Right, and I think so. One of the interests of the act, one of the reasons that the Wetlands Protection Act exists, is to preserve wildlife habitat and fisheries. And there is a presumption that each of the resource areas in question is supportive of, well, I think there may be one that's I think maybe bordering like land subject to flooding, doesn't have that presumption, but most of the resource areas do have the presumption that they are valuable for supporting wildlife habitat. And our duty is to look at potential impacts to those interests. So it's something that we have not really looked at or had come up in quite this way before. So I think it's something, Kathy, that we could reach out to DEP on for guidance. I think it's also something that, again, should be looked at and considered in the NEPA process more broadly. And so there may also be a possibility that we could condition our order on reviewing those comments from the NEPA process in some fashion. I'm not exactly sure what that would look like. That's something we could think about and inquire about also. If you could make some notes to reach out to DEP about that.
Absolutely.
Any further thoughts or comments from the commission at this point?
The peer review document, if you want
Yeah,
to take a look at that.
please go ahead.
No, just that, are we good with request? Are we good with the things that are in the request?
I know the two of you have been reviewing while we were sitting here. Did anything jump out as needing to be adjusted based on our conversations?
Other than dates that are on it, that's the only thing that.
Yes, since the last time I sent it to you all,
right.
I adjusted the dates that the spacing is the same, but just as if it were to be approved this voting instead. But yeah, if you guys think that that's appropriate, essentially, I believe it gives the peer review about a month to complete their work for the first initial review. Maybe more time first.
Do you think that's sufficient time?
There's a lot in there.
Based on how busy people are right now and the amount of material there is to look at.
There may be a note also in the RFP, I believe, that says the commission will accept potentially a later date. I think it's in there, but if you want to more explicitly give them more time, it can be revised to say that.
What's your thought?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd kind of like to get through this process, but people are very busy in the industry.
Right.
The one I printed out today, Cassie, like had April 6th as a due date as far as, but that was from an email, the last 4 emails somewhere.
Yeah. I can play both orders one.
It said Thursday, April 6th for proposals due,
Indeed. Hold on a second.
so that we could review them for this meeting.
Right. No, it should be updated. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's see here.
I just want to put something in reasonable that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah.
If we put sooner dates in, will it
We
discourage
have-
people from applying?
It currently reads that we will make we've asked for proposals to be received on April 21st
To the later one that I have.
with our decision to be made at the April 24th meeting. The city to provide a contract for services on April 27th and funds to be received from the applicant and put into the fund to pay for the services on May 1st. And then we have completion of services by June 26th. That actually seems like more than a month.
Yeah, that's a little bit more.
Yeah, sorry. I think it should match up with what we had in the last one. So like
Okay.
more than that.
So it's maybe 6 weeks or so.
Let's see. And what did I say? So there's a paragraph on the second page, that says responding firms are asked to be able to contract with the Easthampton Conservation Commission and complete an initial review prior to June 26, 2023, and attend the public hearing scheduled for that same date. If this is not feasible for some reason, an alternative later date can be presented and considered. However, we are hoping to keep the review of the notice of intent to this schedule to the extent possible.
So I think we're covered there.
Okay, good.
That sounds good. And you've already updated this to include reviewing the hearing and materials from today.
Yes.
So I think that we are all set, unless there's any further thoughts. Okay. So Cassie, I think we can go ahead and put out that request.
Do you guys have to vote for that? I don't know. I can't remember. Vote to pursue peer review? I mean, it couldn't hurt, I suppose. I can't remember what we've done in the past.
I don't remember either. We can have a vote just to have it on the record.
Motion to issue the request for proposals for the peer review for Northampton Street.
Second.
All those in favor, Patrick?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
August?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Carr?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you, Kathy. And so we will expect to discuss the proposals at the April 24th meeting, which I believe is our next meeting, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, and in the meantime, we have all of the most recent materials from the applicant in what was dated today.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, and then we'll need a motion to continue to that meeting.
Motion to continue April 24th at 6 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor, Patrick?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
August? Weeks?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Carr?
Aye.
Motion carries. So we continue to April 24th at 6 p.m.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
All right. All right. Feel free to shuffle your chair if you don't want to sit with your knees touching anymore. Great. All right, our next order of business is for a public hearing for an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation filed by Heritage Land Serving and Engineering, Inc. on behalf of the Williston Northampton School for resource area delineation only at 198 Park Street, map 162, lot 4, map DEP file number 1510323. Please introduce yourself for the record, Mark.
Sure. My name is Mark Reed from Heritage Land Surveying and Engineering. We're representing Williston. Chuck McCullough is here tonight with me, as well as Dan Nitschke that did the delineation. And I know Cassie has an electronic version of this plan that I'm asking help.
The one that has both, you want me to show that one? Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on just a second, please, or you can go ahead. I'll just pull it up.
So we had a site visit, last Wednesday, this past Wednesday, actually, to walk the wetland boundaries. So that two of the conservation members were there, and Cassie, Dan, Chuck, and myself. And at that meeting, we talked about the delineation and ANRAD that was filed with the commission back in 2015 and approved back in 2015. So I said that we could prepare a plan that shows the 2015 wetland boundaries as well as the current wetland boundaries. So with this plan outlined in the red, and Cassie's got that up on the screen now, the red is the current 2023 wetland boundaries. There are three bordering vegetative wetland areas. One being here, which comprises of the wetland replacement area that was associated with cross-country trail project. And a certificate of compliance was issued by the commission. And at the rear of the property of the school, there are two little fingers of wetlands that come up into the property. Other areas are isolated wetland areas. There's three of them on the property itself. Oh, Jay was there too, sorry. Yes.
Again, you remember this one? We looked at this several years back with Melissa, yeah.
Yeah, my brain is melting a little bit. but I do remember the mitigation area.
Right.
Yes.
And we did a lot of digging, talked about the soils, obviously, because when you say isolated wetland, everyone gets concerned. Is it really isolated? Do you have a connection? And we dug to prove there was no surface hydraulic connection between this wetland and that system, from this area to this system. So these are truly isolated. They were isolated back in 2015 or so when we did it the first time. A couple of them got a little bit bigger than the original delineation about 7 years ago. So there's a little bit of an expansion going on. It could be just the soils getting wetter, up gradient. I'm not really sure why. But we looked at this particular area, meaning this is the one area on the property that does get some ponded water. We've looked at multiple years of aerial photographs, and it's never 10,600 square feet. So it never qualifies as an isolated land subject to flooding. It just doesn't hold enough water. Sure.
So the Williston has this piece of property on the market and for a single family dwelling. That's why the application was submitted in that fashion. And in order to market the property properly, we've requested the ANRAD and approval from the Conservation Commission for it.
Okay, so this had the mitigation area or only cross-country trails.
Yes, that's why these expanded.
Yeah, and that order of conditions is all closed and
Correct,
squared
yeah,
away and everything. Yep.
Right, you can see this is the mitigation area between the 2015 wetland boundary. Right in here. And this area over here was the other.
For the BBW or IVW, I can't.
No, BBW.
Bordering, yeah.
Bordering,
Because it drains right into the stream system that runs along the edge of the property.
right, and then down to,
Eventually the White Brook.
yeah, White Brook. Thank you, yes, White Brook.
And just to understand the property, the town owns the corner where the
Yes.
walkway is. But the town doesn't own all of this area where the riprap is, that's on the private property?
Correct. So this is the new roundabout for the school that was
Yeah.
constructed.
Okay,
This piece of property outlined in the dash line is paid to the city by Williston for the roundabout.
okay.
The property line runs along the top of the slope. The riprap area, well, that's the city's property. Riprap area is on this piece of property.
Okay.
Yes.
With an easement.
With
an easement.
Yeah.
Out of the city, which is
So there- okay,
Right.
got it, I'm clear now.
Yep.
Thank you.
And the access is into the property is a paved driveway and a gravel area. The old house and barn located in this area of the property when it was farmed back many years ago.
And who all was on the site visit?
Was this the first site visit or was there another site visit? Oh, okay. I was not out.
Any observations or anything to share from the site visit?
No, nothing unusual, really, very much like is presented here.
I mean, it's when you look at the IVWs, you can see these like sort of wet draining things that seem to connect them. And it is kind of like, wait, are these IVWs? But Dan did go around and dig up the soil and showed us what color it all was. And they don't seem to be hydrologically connected.
Hey, did you do delineation originally back for the, yeah, I thought so for when it was gonna be a solar project.
Yeah, we had, I think, at least 5 members there last time. Melissa and Dan were on that at the time.
I wouldn't want to put a house on them. The water in my basement.
Yes, and I can share pictures from the site visit if you like, or.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, yeah, sorry, I'm trying to shuffle around, sorry. Okay.
Say again? Yeah, this is the new high school down here, yeah. This doesn't really show.
I call it the White Brook Raceway.
Yeah, right.
So,
Okay. So this is from the edge of the gravel, existing gravel place, area that's kind of just beyond the driveway, which would be behind us. In this image, there's that riprap area that is within the property but has an easement to the city. And this is that tree grove to the left. It's noted on the plan. Yeah.
I'm just looking up there.
Oh, that's. So I kind of, it's spinning around a lot. I think what I'd like to, this is that driveway area again that we were using. Just kind of spinning around, showing that area better, and we're making our way. And I'm trying to get through the IBW areas, or I got a few photos of those seemingly channeled areas that Dan need to use. Nice enough to do some more show us some soil samples from that area. Okay, getting farther away. Okay, so we're approaching the area where the replication was completed, that kind of largest BBW area. You can just slightly see a flag there, but we're kind of getting closer to it here. Okay, some of the flags here, and then one of the requirements I think you noted, Mark, at the site visit, that was that needs to be staked out, that new replication area. So that was still the case there on site. You can see some of the flags.
rebar out there that's marking that.
Yeah, yeah, it was the rebar.
4 feet tall.
Yep. Yeah, you can see in this picture the flags are right too. Yeah, so just kind of looking at that area. So along this tree line here is where it starts to maybe join back with the stream that goes along the edge of the property there. If anyone wants me to pause or go back anywhere, just give a shout, but I'm just gonna kind of zip through. So the video, I can play the videos if you all want, but just kind of me spinning around. Do you want me to?
That's okay. Yeah. Most of those shots you can take right about here, down, this wetland and down into the property in that direction.
Exactly right.
And so we're showing, so the plan shows flags on City of Easthampton property on the subject parcel, and then there are no flags shown on this private property.
Correct.
And we're just confirming the boundary on the private parcel or the flags on the.
No, just the private property.
Okay.
The flags that were on the city property, were from the 2015 delineation. So that, the red ones, we have some flags here, but it really is irrelevant because the 100-foot buffer zone are from the high points. The high points that affect the property.
Have the Kavanaugh and Tiffany properties been fully investigated for additional wetlands?
So this, yes, this is Kavanaugh's an existing house here. Originally in 2015, this started there, and flows towards the White Brook.
The head of the wetland, right?
Yeah.
And that was reinvestigated this year?
We looked at that, yes. It hasn't changed. The Tiffany property, this is a mowed meadow. It's still the same as it was in 2015.
Yeah, did you look at that again?
What's that?
Did you look at that again?
Not over here. I looked over here. But what I'm hearing you ask is, could we send a buffer zone off of this back into the property?
And is there anything else up in this area that would potentially impact this property that
No,
a owner would want to look
no
at?
wetland up here. It all starts right here. This is the head. This is really the head, theoretically. The water's bubbling out of the ground right here. And this is what feeds that stream. So there's no wetland up this. I didn't look on the other side. There's no reason to go on the other side of the stream. So I will look at that side of the stream. It looked just like it did years ago.
And no perennial stream anywhere, no riverfront area.
No. Extended buffer zone off of the stream and back into the property just so you see the buffer zone.
Well, yeah, the plan really shows the assumed buffer zone coming up into here. We don't show any flags over here, but we honored the original wetland flags with the buffer zone.
So this line is 700 feet from here?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Could you repeat that, please?
The buffer zone on the property itself is approximately, I'll move my hand on this side, 100 feet from the wetlands that were shown in 2015 over onto our property. So this is all buffer zone.
Property.
Yep.
Which one?
Tiffany.
Tiffany.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this was not reflagged this year.
Correct. It was not. Correct.
But there are some remnant flags there and they look like they're still on the edge of the stream channel. So we didn't re-add flags.
How do we know that that's the head of the stream right there? For the brook?
Because above that, I don't see any water bubbling up out of the ground. Meaning upgrading, meaning go this way. So it really sort of starts right here. Just the ground's very wet right there.
Okay, that doesn't flow south at all into the wetland?
It goes this way. Everything's going down the hill.
And the topography is to the east, right, in that area. You can see it on some of the pictures.
Yeah, you can go back to that if you want.
So my concern is that you're seeing shifts in the edges of a lot of these wetlands. Not having re-examined this, I'm a little bit nervous about confirming a buffer zone that would impact a potential buyer of this property, not knowing if that's actually the current buffer zone.
Well, I did look at the edge of this. I didn't go in and put new flags up, but I did look at it and I saw some old flags that were here and they still look like they're on the edge. It didn't look like it was getting any bigger. And I don't look on the other side because your jurisdiction's from this way, from that side over.
We only changed this little area here, right? Because that's the closest that it would be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still a few flags out there. Like I said, they look like they were up the end of the stream last time.
It's not.
To me, it sounds like the boundaries are shown here from what you, in attendance to the site visit, you're saying.
Okay, so for those who were there, are you comfortable approving as flagged? Do you have any questions that we want to investigate further?
Would the buyer be notified of the IVWs as well?
Yes. Yeah. So this plan is part of the documents that, that Wilson has disclosed to any buyer. The one without the old flagging is the new, what my recent flags, right? Yeah. So that disclosure's been made to them, as well as your, decision on the ANRAD will be disclosed to them.
And Whitebrook's more than 200 that way.
Yeah, no, it is. It's, yeah, see where the.
It's very far.
It's how we get on that.
Yeah. Building.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. Relatively. Yeah, right. Another couple of school buildings away.
Further discussion from the commission?
So I did receive public comment from an abutter, Robert Parent, regarding concern about one of the IVWs, of whether or not it would be, maybe it could be certified as a vernal pool. That person made a submission through the public portal that Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program has, and received a response from Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. And I can read that, especially if you'd like, or
It's relative to this.
Yes.
Which is mostly on the city's property, but a small portion of it is on Wilson's property.
Okay. Okay, hold on just a second. Let's see. So, I can show you the materials that Mr. Parent submitted first, if you'd like, or just show the response. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So, let's see. The oldest one was from, you provided images from January 13. Let me share my screen real quick.
Pizza or something.
It's okay.
You know that? We don't eat Mondays.
This is the IBW area. That's a Series A noted on the plan. This image is from January 14th, 2023. There's a photo from February 22nd, 2023. Again, that area again. Okay, hold on, make sure I'm on the right thing here. So this was audio recorded by Mr. Parent from the property, the school property, on March 25th, 2023, which was submitted with his application.
Frogs.
So the relevance of that being that one of the criteria would be, of course, of wood frogs potentially for identifying a vernal pool. Here's a photo from March 25th, provided by Mr. Parent, of the same area, the A series. And let's see, and the message from Mr. Parent here. Cassie, spring peepers season is finally upon us. I've attached a short video clip that I took last evening of the vernal pool on this project adjacent to the Mountain View School driveway. This is clearly a very active and unique location. I have an audio clip that I will separately email to you. I understand that this property is listed for sale and that redevelopment of it is likely. I'm perfectly fine with that, but hope that the new property owner and Conservation Commission will find a way to preserve and protect this valuable wetland resource area, as well as the Northampton School was planning with its solar field proposal. Please let me know if there is anything I can do to assist. Thank you, Robert Parent. And then he also sent me a message on the 31st. This is him forwarding me his submission to Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. Hello, I realize that this information needs to be submitted through the Heritage Hub, which is their online portal, but since that system is currently down, I'm sending this along via email. I will attempt to load this into the hub next week. I am submitting this information as an abutter to the property who observes it on a daily basis. It has lived across from the street for over 30 years. The PDF files attached below were developed on behalf of the current property owner who has submitted an ANRAD for the property. The Easthampton Conservation Commission is scheduled to discuss the ANRAD on April 10th. The vernal pool area that I have observed on multiple occasions over many years is identified as an IVW flag series A1 through A10. There may be other vernal pools on the property. There are definitely other isolated wetland areas on the property, but I do not have firsthand observation of these locations. I have attached 2 photos of the pool. The first one was taken on Saturday, March 25th, and the second one was taken on March 27th. I have also attached 2 video files taken at night, so the image isn't very helpful, but the video files clearly document the ongoing spring peeper activity in the pool area. I have also attached an audio clip. All of these were recorded on March 24th. Please let me know if you have any questions or I can be of any additional assistance relative to the certification of this vernal pool. Robert Parent. And I showed you those images which he referenced in there. And let's see. Okay, I'll get back to this one. So, this is a copy of his submission to National Heritage Species Program, evidence primarily being full chorus of wood frog by his assessment. I don't know if you want me to read all this, but this is basically, it's interesting to see how it works on that system. But if you want me to read any of this, please let me know.
I don't think that's necessary at this point.
Excellent.
I want to know what they said.
Well, they did, the response comes next. So that
Yeah,
was his
there's a
submission to the
response.
program. Yeah. So, okay, so Mr. Jacob Kubel of who works with Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program provided this response. Hi, Robert. Thank you for following through with submitting this report via Heritage Hub, report number VP-54755. I have reviewed your observation information, and it does appear that the subject basin could be a certifiable vernal pool habitat. However, I am hesitant to conclude such without additional information about its hydro period. The basin appears to be rather small and shallow, and it has full sun exposure throughout the day. Therefore, before approving a certification, I would want to see stronger physical evidence that the basin sustains a viable vernal pool environment and, at a minimum, meets the strict definition of vernal pool habitat in the Wetlands Protection Act regulations, i.e. the hold water for a minimum of 2 continuous months clause. To meet the above, I recommend that the pool basin be monitored through the spring to evaluate hydro period and, if possible, wood frog reproduction. In doing so, the objectives would be twofold. 1, document the standing water in the pool through at least May 24th, 2 months after the date you observe wood frog chorusing, and, if feasible, document survival of wood frog tadpoles to metamorphosis. Wood frog tadpoles typically metamorphose during the month of June in forest settings within our region, but their development rate is accelerated in warm water with ample sun exposure. Therefore, I suspect it is possible that tadpoles in this particular pool could reach metamorphosis by late May. I have seen rapid development of this and other tadpole amphibian species in a similar pool in Westfield. I understand you may not have legal access to the pool basin itself, and monitoring of tadpole development can require some effort. Therefore, I am CCing the Easthampton Conservation Commission in the event it is possible to arrange for an evaluation of the pool in association with the review of the NRAD or an applicable regulatory filing, e.g. a notice of intent, in the future. There is a slight possibility I could make at least one visit to the pool while in the region on other business this spring. Let's try to come up with a plan to see whether either of these 2 objectives noted can be pursued. And then, let's see, that was Bob Dutch's that I read earlier. He gave a response, Mr. Parent gave him a response on April 5th, which he said, Jacob, thank you for your quick follow-up. In my theory, albeit unproven, my theory, albeit unproven, is that groundwater in this area is impacted by the underlying Barnes Aquifer. The Barnes Aquifer is the sole source confined aquifer that tapers out to the west of this location. My property, located at 4 South Street, is located just outside the limits of the Zone 2 for this aquifer, with bedrock, arcos underlain by basalt, coming close to the surface in my backyard. If the confined aquifer is leaky in this area, it could contribute to the vernal pool that is seen at this location, as well as high groundwater issue that plagued the access road to the Mountain View School. Let's see. And then Mr. Kubel responded saying, thanks for the additional insight, Robert. It is in my discussion with Cassie, I had speculated that a high water table could conceivably make such a shallow pool viable. Let's see an eye on it. Let's keep an eye on it and see what kind of monitoring can be done. So Robert Parent, after that conversation did provide those images I shared earlier from January and from February. And in that message, Mr. Kubel alluded to a conversation with me that he had because he called me before he sent the message to let me know that it's coming. And he had also noted that maybe it would make sense to go out and see if there are deeper pockets within that pool that might, if there's portions of it that are deep. I don't know. So that was something that he had also suggested. Maybe it would make sense for the commission to try to review on site. Though I don't know. I would assume you would need to do some kind of transect type situation to find if there would be pockets like that.
There's just
You
not
might have
enough
walked,
water
yeah.
there. You gotta have 18 inches, 16 inches of water at this time of the year for it to be viable vernal pool habitat. Most likely, it's gonna dry out and the wood frog egg nexus will become food for the wildlife in the area. It's just not, it's not deep. Even in January, you're out there in January and it's like 8 inches deep. It's not that much water. It needs to be more water to be viable.
What did you say? Sorry.
I said it's gonna be almost 90 on Friday. We could go check.
Yeah.
It's true. It'd be very hot.
Right. But I think one of the pictures that Cassie has of it, you can see it's very, very shallow. It's not a deep pool. And that was last Wednesday's site visit.
That's correct.
Would Williston be amenable to ongoing monitoring this spring before a decision is made to know, based on the recommendations, whether this is a viable pool?
Sure. I mean, we want to do the right thing, I think, but yeah, I would tell you our own experience is that as we care for that property, it's pretty dry out there before too long. So, and, caring for it is, I'd be stunned if the water stays there for any long period. I haven't been out there myself a lot, but I've been out there with my team and they've had to take care of the property. And it gets pretty dry out there. So I'd be stunned if it was standing for any longer than some of the moments in time we see some of these pictures after a rain, after a period of time with snow and stuff. But yeah, I mean, if we have to do, we've come this far. We did this because we thought it was the right thing to do for the next person who wants to travel.
But let's be clear, you're not obligated to. It's not certified vernal pool, so it is your option.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not certified at this point.
Well, I would say that right now, what we're trying to do is just get a good guide, I think, for Mark's advice. Just say we just wanted to make sure that what we had presented in 2015, if there were any alterations or changes, we just wanted to make sure we were representing the most up-to-date information for what we required to fulfill.
And the surface flow from the new roadway that goes to the school is pitched to the south. So the flow from the sidewalk and the pavement area all pitches away from this vernal pool area. And there's a series of swales and stormwater structures along the roadway on the south side of the access road to the school. That hold water pretty good.
Yes.
So, all right,
I was kind of serious about Friday. I mean, it's been dry all week, hasn't rained in a week, and it's gonna be really hot. So if that pool is,
Say that again.
I'm saying that if that pool is dried up by Friday, then you kind of have your answer about whether it dries out or not. It's a dry, warm week without any rain.
But you have until May, according to the National Heritage, so to get it to dry out, right?
What was the visit that we went on a few years ago? Was it for the replication or was it?
Likely was for the certification of the wetland replication area.
So it was a few years ago, and it was in the winter, so it was just packed with snow, and I was following behind everyone in the snow. Sometimes I need to use a cane for balance, so I was watching the ground, particularly to watch my footing, and in this area where all the the tall grasses that were bent over into the snow, and in between were pockets of ice. Not thick ice, but small pockets of ice that were cracking. So I particularly noticed that because I had watched the area and then I went around and I was following everyone else in the snow. But there was an area where there was like grass and then pockets of grass. So there was water there, even though it was frozen. And was it December? I don't know, it was a few years ago.
We can see when.
I think it was before the pandemic. I believe the replication.
So I don't remember specifically what the RDA form has on it. It's been a while since I looked at it, but I guess we could either act now and could we note that we're not commenting on the vernal pool status on that area as an option, or the other option would be wait and see what happens, and I guess be up to the applicant.
Well, he says May 24th is, it's gotta have water until May 24th, which
Yeah.
you said, I don't know how that's gonna
I was just
happen
saying,
with the drought.
We
and
just even continue till the next meeting if it's dried up and the next meeting.
I mean, is a vernal pool even something that would be subject to an RDA, an ANRAD? I'm sorry, I'm saying
would it change the buffer zone?
Or does it change how?
Vernal pools are only protected by the resource they live inside.
Okay, so the buffer zone would not increase 100 feet
Not at all.
another
Wouldn't
direction or
change a
anything like
thing.
that.
Wouldn't change a thing.
So the ANRAD would look exactly, whatever would look exactly the same, whether or not.
Even if it was
it's-
called a vernal pool, it would look identical, because it's just the buffer zone is what we'd be showing.
Yeah.
There's no special resource protection for vernal pools specifically.
Right. And it's just something that would be in our minutes that would say whether or not it was a vernal pool at some point or another. So we don't have to wait to act, I don't think, we wouldn't have to wait to decide if this is a vernal pool or not to act on the ANRAD. I don't think it changes anything really. Unless I'm mistaken.
Nancy, are you familiar with those aspects of the regulation in detail?
No, unfortunately not in detail. I know that it's like complicated or, the protections for the vernal pools in the website are not a lot, unfortunately, until they're certified and then it's
Protected by the resource that lives inside. So if it's in a BVW, whatever BVW performance standards is the same thing that the vernal pool would be afforded. If it's bordering land subject to flooding, it's afforded those performance standards as BLSF, not because it's a vernal pool specifically. Vernal pool designation does constitute an outstanding resource water under 401, and you wouldn't be able to dump stormwater into it. That's about the only sort of protection it really gets.
And then is there any other special things from Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program if there was to be work within the area?
No, whatever wetland lives inside of, that's the value, or that's what the commission can use for protection of that vernal pool.
So I guess it's up to the applicant as to whether we wait or whether we just proceed, but it doesn't sound like it makes a difference and it won't affect what we issue, really.
Doesn't sound like that to me.
Oh, since we haven't dealt with this anytime recently and we are locking in the delineation for 3 years, I would like before we act to review those regs for Kathy or I to review and just make sure that we're fully understanding all of the implications.
Continue to the next meeting just for now and we'll.
Yeah, I think so.
I also got I don't know if you want for me to read the DEP comments that were received.
Oh, please.
If you'd like. Sorry, I just remembered that. Let's see here. Okay, this is the DEP file number, which the project needs. File number is 1510323. Comment number 1. The NRED filing fee that was submitted for this single family house lot, not for any commercial use. The commission should review this and ensure any future project is for a single family house. If not, additional filing fees are required. Comment number 2, the commission should note that the delineation report states that the field assessment was conducted in February of 2023. Number 3, no mowing of vegetation should be taking place here while the site is under review. Number 4, to help ensure the Conservation Commission have sufficient expertise available to address specific issues regarding an applicant's filing. MGL 44, Section 53G gives commissions authority to charge a fee for the employment of outside consultants that allow for the use of the fee to ensure that they have necessary information for them to make the decision pursuant to the Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40, and 310 CMR 10.00. If you have any questions regarding this letter, please contact Mark Stinson, the circuit rider. Okay.
Thanks, Kathy.
So shall we continue?
Motion to continue. 24.
All those in favor, Butcher?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
August? Aye. Weeks?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Carr? Aye. Motion carries.
That we would give you first thing in the agenda.
Quick question. Are we taking public comments this meeting for this item or, sorry, I know we just closed it, continued it, but perhaps next, sorry, this a butter just asked. And
I should have asked, yes, and I'm sorry. So,
Our motion.
how can we do that? Do we have to
You can
administratively?
withdraw the motion. Can we
I
leave it
withdraw.
open?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't again. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of withdrawing the motion, Patrick? Brian?
Aye.
August? Aye. Weeks?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Carr? You can tell it's getting late because I started forgetting the names of the commissioners. Please, and I did know that you were here and I did mean to offer you that opportunity. My apologies. Please,
I'm Beth Tiffany. I'm in a butter.
yes.
And two questions. Well, one question. So with this buffer, that means the building, what would be sold as residential building only in this area. Is that correct?
You can work in the buffer zone with their approval.
Okay,
It's not a no-touch zone.
okay.
We're not approving that. This.
No, we're not
No, but if
approving
that
any
were to
development
happen-
right now.
They would
No.
have to
So
come
any
back.
tree
in the future.
removal, anything in this buffer zone would have to come back.
Correct, exactly.
Okay. This is just a comment. I have lived there since 1978 and walked those fields many, many times. Mine and Lively's, Williston's, whomever's. Last year was the coolest thing ever because we watched the heron eat and hang out in that wetland and come to my field and hunt and eat within 10 feet from me. I lived there all summer long, August, September. It was hot last year.
Mhm.
Don't think you'd be catching frogs and fishing if it was dry.
Mhm.
Just a comment.
Okay.
So sorry.
My fields, yes.
Did you say you saw it in that A series, that little isolate?
Oh, sure, the ducks are in there. You can hear the ducks through the summer.
I just couldn't see reading the motion.
sorry, yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And every year is different and I don't know, how deep it was, but it was wet enough that the wildlife was eating there.
Okay. Thank you.
Just didn't mind to make a note about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other comments? All right.
Hold on, sorry. We have a comment online from Mr. Tom Lautenhauser. Excuse me, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey again, Tom Lautenhauser here on East Street. Just regarding the vernal pool, I would say that, just because it dries out this year, if it does or not, doesn't mean that it's not viable habitat. And I would say that hearing Bob Parent's recording of fairly decent sounding wood frog chorus would lead me to believe that at least some years there is a viable population there, that some frogs make it out of there. So I wouldn't take this year's experience as definitive. It's been hot and a lot of open vernal pools like that are quite low already this year. And with this upcoming week, I think once leaf out happens, water levels are really going to drop fast. So I doubt that you'd see viability this year, but it's not definitive. So that's all. And it doesn't necessarily affect jurisdiction here, because it's been flagged as an isolated wetland, but just in terms of its biological capacity, don't take this year's experience definitively. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Any further comments? All right.
Yeah.
Motion to continue?
Motion
For real, Tim?
to April 24th.
All those in favor, Patrick?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
August?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
Whittemore? Carr?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we will continue this one to April 24th.
Right, so the reason we weren't this time is because.
You want to keep that for- Cassie, just hold on to that, yeah.
Because they've already been through it, so, going through it, so I will try, we'll see, but most likely no. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Sure.
Moving on to request for certificate of compliance. Our first item is One Industrial Loft LLC, 1 Perry Street, Mass. DEP, file number 1510298 for tract 1 of the mill redevelopment project, map 135, 131, lot 2/1.
Yeah, I received a letter from the applicant asking to continue the item to the next meeting.
Okay, and will that be the case for the next item as well?
Correct.
Then can we have a motion to continue both of the One Industrial Lofts projects, certificate of compliance requests to the next meeting?
Motion to continue both items to April 24th at 6 p.m. Second.
All those in favor, Buttrick?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
August? Weeks?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Carr?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, on to enforcement actions. Kathy, I know we need to speak about D and E. Anything on A through C?
No.
Okay. So item D is 93 Northampton Street rear, map 128, lot 113, enforcement orders 2022-003. I know that we had asked members of the commission to go back and revisit the site. How many folks were able to do that? All right, so we have 4 folks out. Any comments or observations that you want to offer up? We were going to, take another look at the site and think about potential alternate actions as part of the restoration plan agreement.
Nothing jumps out real easy. Everything else around that is so high ground, it just didn't seem like it would be effective.
I have a question that came up about the steel or whatever metal it is, plank that's over the screen right now, the bridge. You're talking about keeping it there to use to get trucks across with equipment to build a new bridge. And it's just sitting on piles of rocks. And I guess the question I have is like, how heavy are these trucks? Is it gonna cause that bridge to collapse or sink even more? It doesn't look like it's very far above the brook and it doesn't look very sturdy.
We're not gonna bring any trucks across it. We're just bringing the excavator over there.
Isn't an excavator a truck?
No. It's low ground pressure. It's very different. They're tracks. They drive on it and it's stable enough to drive over. We actually already did, so to do test bits and stuff. So.
Question.
We're gonna pump the concrete from the other side over with a pump truck. So.
Yeah.
And nothing will be all overhead. So no major trucks, no dump trucks or concrete trucks or anything like that. A couple pickup trucks maybe, but that's about it.
And the invasives look to be primarily more closer up to the agricultural field. There's not that many invasives right down in the disturbed area. And there's a lot of bittersweet growing up into the trees, and there's multiflora rose all over the place, but it's not in the immediate buffer zone area. So it seems like whatever plan, if that's going to be part of the plan, and it wasn't clear to me when I was looking at it if what was being proposed was because we had just seen you at this other site visit, and it seemed like there was some confusion over whether what was being proposed by your group was to actually do either the invasive management or
Build a BVW.
build a new BVW. And so I wasn't clear which question to be addressing, but if you're going to do invasive species management, I think it needs to be an area that goes up closer to the edge of the meadow. Because that's where all the invasive species are. They're not down one.
Sure, I mean, we could,
I disagree. I think there's quite a lot of barberry through that whole area along the stream.
I might just
And also
not be
garlic
able to
mustard.
see it at this time of year.
It's everything that's starting to turn green now is invasive. Pretty much, as is what it looks like this time of year. They green up first. That's why they're so successful.
Anyway, I also wondered if you could just clarify which you were proposing.
we proposed the replacement wetland first, and it sounded like that wasn't enough. So then we went, my opinion, we went to invasive species management as the option. I don't know if both of them are still on the table. I thought the discussion would sort of went to invasive control versus building another well.
Instead of,
right.
Okay.
And am I recalling it correctly? Okay.
Yeah, we were discussing whether the additional wetland replication would have any real benefit.
Would it be wetland?
Right.
Because of the terrain, the elevation.
Right, and I think we were leaning towards thinking that some robust invasive management through that corridor would have more benefit in the long term than 100 square feet or 300 square feet. I forget where we landed of BBW enhancement.
I think that makes more sense.
Because the BBW, I think, the new BBW would just get taken over by the invasive. There's no invasives.
Except the invasives are upland invasives that are there. There wasn't wetland invasives.
Julie disagreed, right?
They're all along the corridor. I don't actually know about.
But they're not wetland species.
Yeah, they're not wetland.
That doesn't mean they're not
Right.
living in a
Right.
wetland or next to a wetland, but they're technically not wetland species.
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed that I wanted to bring up, the buried pipe that we had not been able to figure out the source of. There is a drainage pipe, I think it was a 4-inch black drainage pipe that's about, 20 feet up and around that is feeding that. You can see right now the path of water flowing to that location where that other pipe is buried under the road.
It's coming from a structure off of Northampton Street. One of those.
I don't know where
4
it's coming
inches
from.
is a foundation drain, some sort of drain off a structure.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
It's pointed
interesting.
right at the sort of towards but behind where the new Starbucks would be going in. It's like at that angle, right towards what would have been the old kind of pad for the driving range. That area that's been, I think it must have been concrete that was ripped up. It's a strange surface right now.
It's kind of like graded,
Yeah.
crushed stone.
Yeah. It's pointed kind of right at that. So I don't know if that warrants further investigation to understand where that water is coming from.
It'd be a long run for a 4-inch pipe to go all the way from there up to where that little hut was.
There was water coming out of that pipe when we were there.
And you were talking about the pipe that goes under the unpermitted crossing?
Yeah.
Right. And we could see that it was receiving water. We didn't find that, the pipe that you're talking about, that possibly feeds it from upstream, but basically I remember that, Sarah.
Where was the black pipe? I have not seen it. Where is it? How
Kathy,
far
can you pull
from
up
the temp bridge is it?
maybe
100 feet,
20 or
200
30
feet, 50
feet?
feet?
Julie got one, but I can just do a map.
Let's take a look at the site map.
I have that picture there.
I'll pull up mouse map or two to get aerial imagery.
So what do you think it's coming in over here somewhere?
This is the driving range.
So this is where the driving range would be over
I think
here.
it's in this area.
Okay, you gotta watch quickly
The
here.
closest structure would be over here, it would have a foundation.
Here's the pipe, and following the path
I'm gonna put it on the screen, folks.
back to
Oh,
that.
so it's not that far away.
Yeah,
Okay, it's about
maybe
60
20
feet away.
feet, 30 feet.
I don't know what it is. I don't.
So it's kind of,
You read it here?
yeah, it's like right here, kind of by the
Or
edge.
something. It's all I can
And
think of.
it's kind of pointing this way, so I don't know.
I bet you it's coming from over here.
Sorry, just so I have it
Just
right.
because of the vintage of it and all the veg that's growing on top of it. This is all new development.
Yes,
This would have been older development.
that older,
Be my guess.
house that
In the
used to
black
be
pipe,
restaurant.
in the 70s and early 80s, they used a lot of ABS black pipe.
It wouldn't have to have taken a sharp bend at some point though, because
Yeah.
it's not pointed that way, it's pointed this way.
It does make sense from the driving range. There's nothing
Right.
in
Yeah, I
water
don't know.
to try to drain it. And plus, they elevated the tee boxes so that it would never have water in it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Never saw that
Yeah.
pipe out there.
Like it was buried in leaflets
Was there
before.
flow coming out of it?
There was, yeah,
Was it-
and it was a very clear path to that other buried pipe that we've looked
No
at
iron
before.
staining?
Not that I saw.
I think it's coming from the foundation. Because there was iron staining, it would mean it's coming from the surface somewhere, which would have iron in it.
Right.
And it would go anaerobic and then it would become aerobic once it came out to oxygen again. Strange. We don't know where that pipe's coming from.
It was strange. I agree.
A second.
So if we wanted to go the invasive route, I think to be productive, we would need to look at treating a, extensive swath of several hundred feet along that corridor. I don't know if that's something that you're interested in entertaining and looking at. I'm not sure what the cost would be for that.
We originally proposed around 250 feet or so, because we had looked upstream and downstream of the two crossings, and if you add it all together, it's around 250 linear feet, if that's okay. And then we would do, don't yell at me if I say it wrong, or speak up, like all the way to the width of the woods, up to the fields on both sides.
So 125 feet on each side of the crossing now to the woods, to
Yeah.
the meadow, to the woods.
So about 250 long, and we can use the center of the two crossings as our center line to do 125 in both directions.
That's a pretty
Plus the
good
width of the
size.
woods.
I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, that I think that it would need to go to the edge of the
Oh,
lake.
okay, yeah.
Because if you just did it right near the stream, it wouldn't have much effect because there's so many invasives up toward the fields.
Okay.
So
Good point.
What if we did 250 feet in each direction? And I'm guessing it's maybe 50-foot wide swath each way, which would be about an acre of treatment.
You said 250 feet in each direction of the crossing? Okay,
So
sorry.
it's 500 linear feet.
$250 on each side of the stream, and then how long?
No, yes.
Whatever the width of the woods
Wooded
is.
area.
I'm just guessing is maybe 50 feet each way. I don't know if that's
250 feet
accurate.
downstream.
It's wider as you go
upstream.
away though.
Yeah.
What is it, like 30 on each side?
It's hard to say. I think it varies potentially.
That's a day. Yeah. I'm okay with it. Yeah.
And I think to treat what's in there, we probably, to make a significant dent, we'd probably want to do 2 seasons. I don't know if the recommendation would be once a season or twice. You may know, Dan, off the top of your head. What would be
Typically
likely?
once a year. Yeah. And the best time is the fall. It's when the plants are sending most of their nutrients into the root system. Glyphosate's a translocator anyhow, so it's going to go there, but it goes faster if you do it in September.
No, I'm all right with 2 seasons. Fine.
How does the commission feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
I feel good about it.
And so that, the purpose of that, which would be to allow the unpermitted crossing to remain for a determined amount of time, or what would the amount of time be if this work is completed? Guess those details perhaps we would want to sort out.
We need the bridge there to be able to access the what's that considered?
The back side, yeah, the
East side of the stream.
Yeah, so
And once that's done, then that new bridge becomes the transport, the access, and the old bridge gets taken down.
So that could be 2 years.
I mean, I'll put that bridge in as soon as you guys approve it. I'll put the bridge in
Okay,
within the next couple months.
I see.
It really depends on you approving the NOI.
Okay.
Well, I think it also depends on the planning board making their
Like
approval,
everybody,
and
many-
NEPA making their approval.
Many things.
But I can still put the bridge in without the planning board approval. It's not a structure. It doesn't even require,
Right.
I still can put that in. And to have access to the back nine to either mow it or take care of it and maintain it.
But then does that have to be a separate NOI?
It would be included in this one
It's included in this application.
that we were talking about earlier today. That no sense.
That would play into NEPA.
I've never seen the NOI go before MIPA, so I don't know. I don't know if there are other permits that.
NEPA's review is as a full and complete project. I'm not sure that you would be allowed to start a portion of the proposed project before that review was complete. I just don't know the answer to that.
But like I said, let's say that the NEPA doesn't get approved or planning board doesn't approve it. I still want access to the back of my property. Eventually I'm gonna be able to do something on the back of my property. And I need to maintain it and
Understood.
house back there. So could either be a part of that or not. That's the way I see it. And I don't have a single problem with it personally. But, NEPA's a pocket permit. They're just notification. And we've already notified the most important people, yourselves, the planning board, Mass Wildlife, Historical Commission, everybody's been notified of it. So it's not that they can deny the project. They're just gonna move maybe the entrance or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they don't deny or approve anyhow.
They don't deny or approve anything. They just notify everybody, and everybody's already been notified. So it's not anything, like I said, I can.
We could reach out to MEPA and just ask the question about having it a separate action.
I don't mind asking them. We have a good communication with them right now.
Yep.
And the crossings proposed as part of phase 1 of construction. So it is something that could be done at the earlier stages if the NOI is approved. And you're like, well, let's just do the crossing. It sounds like that would make sense.
Right. And of course, your other option, which we've discussed before, would be to submit a separate NOI just for the bridge and pull it out.
We can't approve just part of the project, but.
And have to be a separate notice of intent.
So those options are all still on the table. But in the meantime, if you're amenable to this idea, let's rewrite the wetland restoration plan so that the actions that are already in there for removing the bridge and doing that direct restoration will come later, but we'll have the 2-year invasive management that'll get spelled out, and that would start this season and be this season, so 2023, 2024.
Okay.
So we want a revised document submitted.
Yes.
What we can do is take your site plan of the crossings, show center point, show exactly what that dimension is. So the commission has a graphic of what 500 linear times the width is. So there's no question where we're doing our work and whether we've done it.
So when the unpermitted crossing is removed, is there still work that has to be done for restoration in that area?
Yes, so they would still do the restoration that's proposed.
Around 120,
In the original
150
plan.
square feet. It would remove that concrete culvert that's underneath the road right now.
Mhm.
No,
And that is-
clear up to that point.
And that'll be within the 2 years?
When it would be, that restoration work would need to be completed, sounds like whenever the new crossing was
Right after the
completed.
new crossing was immediately after phase 1.
The commission is not requiring a set date that it needs to come out. They're just saying, allowing it to remain until the new crossing is built.
Right. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not that anybody's planning on it happening, but if something gets really hung up and the temporary crossing's in place for longer than those 2 years, that would be the only.
you still have the right to bring it up again. I mean, it's technically still a violation.
Yeah, let's, when you do the amended restoration plan, let's also put a 2-year date on it. And then we'll have that in writing and hopefully we won't need
Yeah,
to
the
come back to
intention is
it
to
to
be done by
revisit.
this date or whatever. Okay.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Do we have to make a motion?
We don't, I mean, you could just be safe, but I don't think so. I don't think we need to. Yeah. I don't think we've done that in the past, but we're fine.
Okay.
All right, I've lost my pen. All right, moving on to Loudville Condominiums LLC, 6973 Loudville Road, map 140139, lot 28 and 29/11, enforcement order 2023001. Is anyone here for this item?
Yes, hello everyone. This is Ryan Nelson from R. Levesque
All right.
Associates.
Hi, Ryan. So one of the things, I saw there was some new material sent over that we received this afternoon. Looking at it again quickly because we didn't get it until 3 or 4 today. It still does not appear that we received everything that was requested at the last meeting. The commission had asked for an alternatives analysis and quantification of impact numbers associated with each of the options that were on the table so that we could make a decision about how best to move forward and what to require for the restoration action. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not see that spelled out in the documentation.
So we had submitted last Friday as requested a restoration plan, and I had a memo letter that accompanied it. And I had included in that letter our chosen method of restoration, and I did not include other methods at the time on Friday. I thought it was a moot point since we had found a vacuum truck as a solution, but today I added at the request of Cassie other options that were considered but rejected. So 90% of the information.
To be clear,
No.
it is not in your purview to make the decision about how the restoration will be completed. That is in the commission's purview.
I understand.
And I think
Yep.
that we would like to have full information about what those options entail, what the routes would be for each and what the impact areas would be for each.
Yep, I understand. That's why I'm here tonight. Happy to discuss.
Do you have that information that you could share with us now?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna attempt to share my screen.
Oh, sorry, let me make you, make sure you have the ability to do that. Okay, I've added you as a co-host. You should be able to share now.
Okay, so this is the restoration plan. This is the area near the basin. So this is looking towards the woods would be this area. This is the permitted limit of work, the silt fence line. This is the back edge of that field that we had walked. So what had occurred was discharge from the stormwater basin via pump was outletted somewhere at the top of the slope right here. And I've outlined via survey approximately 752 square feet of upland slope that was eroded. And then sediment was deposited into this bordering vegetated wetland here, which is approximately 4,245 square feet. There are silt fence and straw wattles entrenched and staked within the ground on the down gradient side of this sediment disposition area. And at the site visit, we had walked this area and identified a potential corridor for the work to clean up this area. So I'm showing that. You can see the topography. There's kind of a more gradual peninsula that comes down here into the area. And this LOW line is the proposed limit of work equipment access route to get down into that site. Unless anyone has any questions so far, I'll go into what we're proposing to do.
Is that access road,
There's no road.
where would this vacuum truck be? Would it be down the access road or up at the top near the basin?
I had trouble hearing. There's some muffled noise. Can you repeat that, please?
I was just asking where the vacuum truck that you're proposing would be placed. Is it on going down that access road, or is it up at the top of the hill by the basin?
No, it would be parked within the field at the top of the hill.
Okay.
Yep.
So the access road is for any other possible vehicles?
Correct. Yes. Ideally, Carlos from GG Construction that's working on the site, I talked with him last week, and he had mentioned, I'm not sure if he's on the meeting right now, I think he is, but he had mentioned hand tools to scour up and loosen the packed sediment within the wetland. And then that would be vacuumed up into the hose and then up into the truck. In the event that, that's not working, perhaps a mini excavator needs to get down there. That's at the commission to decide. But if that was needed, this is the best way for them to get down there.
What is the slope in the steeper part of that area?
I don't have a number for you right now, but I'd say it's probably a 3-to-1 in this area, probably.
It's steep at the bottom, but a small excavator could do it. A practice excavator could do it.
So some of the other options we had considered or thought about was, perhaps with a skid steer or something, going down there, scraping up the material and running back up. We thought I'd have to make multiple trips to do that. And in doing so, it would run up and scour this section of the slope, something that not ideal. Another option we considered was some sort of stone box or sled where material would be loaded into like a tow sled or a box and then pulled either by cable or winch up the hill into the field area and then cleaned out and then repeated. And then kind of the same issues arose with that. Dragging it up the slope would probably mar and scarify the slope and cause additional damage potentially. We had talked about the potential of a crane, but due to the dense canopy, that wasn't really a viable option, getting an area to pick without trees being in the way. So we thought a vacuum truck with machinery staying up on the hill would probably be the cleanest and least intrusive way to do the work. Obviously, this would all be proposed during a time of dry weather. Once the sediment was removed, any disturbed soil areas or leaf litter that was removed would be seeded with a wetland seed mix. All the erosion controls would stay in place until the area was stabilized, vegetated, and inspected by the commission. And then obviously this area would be monitored going forward for the life of the project. And then the second component of this restoration plan is this upland rivulet that was created from the washout. So we think that this can be repaired with a large excavator, which is already on site at the top of the slope, and then feeding soil down into the washout, and then obviously would facilitate with hand tools to raise this washout back up to existing grade, and then stabilize it with seeding and erosion control blanketing. And once again, that would have to be monitored, and amended as necessary immediately thereafter and for the life of the project. So that's what we're proposing. Happy to hear any comments or input from the commission.
What's the percent slope on that area that needs to be repaired?
I'd say it's between a 3-to-1 and a 2-to-1 in this section right here.
And have you quantified the area of impact from the route you're proposing?
I do not. I don't have an area for this, but I could get that to the commission.
Are there any trees or vegetation to be removed? Is that area already clear?
It's not cleared, but it's an open understory forest, except for maybe this stretch right in here. There's maybe half a dozen eastern hemlock saplings that would be in the way and would have to be removed or trampled and damaged. But from the rest of it, machines can get around the trees, no problem.
Brian, last time we met, Carla seemed unsure about whether a vacuum suction truck could actually create enough suction to get the debris out. Has that been explored?
I believe so. Carlos, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. Yep. I met with a company out of New Haven called McVac, and they were, you know, about as certain as you can be that they can do the job.
Carlos, I think I read in their information they can go up to, I think, 600 feet of hose or something it was.
I didn't see that. I know that they have different trucks for different applications, and it wasn't nearly, speaking to the person from McVac, it wasn't nearly a problem that I thought it was going to be. They say they do stuff like that all the time.
Okay.
I would probably do, that would be the cleanest way to get that material out of there, I would think. I think so.
All right, so it sounds like we're comfortable moving forward with the vac truck option.
If the vac truck people think they can do it at that distance and that elevation, that's pretty amazing, but.
It's worth a try.
Okay. I would like to have more quantification of the size and species of vegetation that's going to be impacted along the access route. I would also like to have more information on the specific slopes involved for those two areas, so we understand what sort of stabilization is necessary. I'm inclined to think that erosion control blanket is not going to be sufficient to stabilize the scour area. I haven't seen it in person yet, though. I don't know, for those who have, do you have thoughts?
It's steep. It would have to be staked in, and you couldn't just put a blanket on it and hope for the best. You'd have to do straw wattles down at certain increments of 8 feet or something like that, just to keep it together.
Standard BFES lifts or something like that, probably, but.
Like soil encapsulated.
Yeah,
that's, yeah.
That would definitely hold it.
Right.
Pricey, relatively speaking.
And parts of it are steeper than others. Sort of going down and then get steeper.
Yeah.
It's almost one of the steepest areas where it is, so.
Is the commission familiar with the idea of soil lifts, encapsulated soil lifts?
I am not.
Those would be where you have basically a sort of a fold of geotextile, and you put them in layers so that they create kind of steps, so that you're rebuilding a section at a time. And rather than expecting the whole thing to hold together with a blanket on top, you're wrapping it.
I didn't know what it was called, but I know what you're talking about now.
Is that similar to what we did 298 Largo?
Yes,
similar.
Somewhat,
yes,
yeah.
Similar. Yeah.
Right, where they made the wall. That was vertical, so it was a little bit of a different application, but same concept.
But the fabric acts like a dead mantle, keep everything tied together.
Yep.
And you can do this with biodegradable fabric, so that,
right,
just basically.
Yeah, like a jute fabric. So I agree that would certainly be a longer term solution to allow it to fully stabilize and vegetate.
But it could be that there are less rigorous ways that would be stable enough, for this.
It's a narrow area at this point. It's a narrow gully. Wow, what the width is.
Do you know, Dan, would they be able to reach and accomplish that without having to go down the slope to install those from above?
I think so. Yeah. You don't have to wrap them back underneath too far, especially, it's not serving a geotechnical purpose here. So you could lift from an excavator from the top and kind of drop the fabric down and then have people do it from the bottom and build it up.
Because the fabric doesn't have to be filled when it's put in there. Right?
Yeah.
You can just bring the fabric and place it and then fill on top of it.
Yeah.
You kind of do it one step at a time.
Yeah.
So you'd lay it down,
Fill it,
fold it back
another-
over,
another-
lay a
yep.
new one on. Yeah.
Yeah, but you might have to dig more into the slope.
Okay.
To anchor it.
Yeah, to anchor it. So it might be more.
This is a little bit of a deep hole here.
Yeah. And usually you do them in like foot increments, but with this, you might be able to do much thicker layers.
Double foot.
Yeah. Just, you know what you wouldn't want would be water to start eroding underneath the fabric and you don't necessarily see it.
Exactly.
Well, it wasn't a normal course of water that created, so it's not like there's, necessarily water coming out of the bank at that location pushing against anything.
There's going to be a preferential path now.
Well, there is now, but I'm saying there's not like a groundwater effect occurring that's going to kind of undermine it. There's groundwater coming out of the bank in other places. You can see that.
But is that an infiltration basin at the top that's seeping water into the groundwater?
Yeah, it's a ways away.
It is, yeah. It's probably 80 feet away. So Ryan, Carlos, are you familiar with the concept we're talking about?
I am not.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
What did you call it?
Encapsulated soil lift?
Okay.
Are there any locally that they could check out perhaps?
Oh, I could send them the plan from the 298 Loudville project, but I don't know if that's similar enough. But it makes sense to you. I think they used, it wasn't fabric, I didn't think. I
Yeah,
thought it was.
it could be similar
Metal.
concepts.
That was a non-biodegradable fabric.
I believe that's correct. I think it might have been in
Because
the
they didn't
middle.
want it to break down because of the location.
Right.
It was.
Yeah, actually Cherry Street would happen too.
Oh, that's right. We have that one.
And down at Sheldon's.
That was Bucky Sparkle.
Yeah, that's right.
Zen Engineering.
This engineer. He did it, but so that was 298, and then yes, it sounds like more similar potentially would be the Cherry Street project.
I think so, yeah.
But I'm happy to share those both plans with them if they'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm not sure Cassie is, well, I guess it's all public record, so that should be fine if you share the one that's not a city project.
Yeah, I feel confident about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we're not like prescribing that this is the way it must be done. This would be the
a direction.
This would be the way that we know would work. Not to say that there are not other ways that would also potentially work.
But I would like you to take a look at that, and if there's a reason why you don't think that would be appropriate here, then give us some options of what you would recommend that would be more robust than just the erosion control blanket.
Yep, I understand. We can add those lift and fabric details to the plan. That makes sense.
Okay. Other questions from the commission? I want to talk about the stream, the in-stream habitat, and an independent monitor here when we get to that point.
Okay.
Anything else?
I was gonna ask about planting and seeding, but it's dark. It's pretty dark down.
Yes, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, was there, I don't have the restoration plan that you sent in front of me, Ryan. Is there proposed planting and seeding on there?
Yes, so we do have a wetland seed mix after the area is removed of the sediment. The conditions right now, obviously there wasn't a whole lot of herbaceous stuff to observe. Understory was kind of bare there. There's a couple saplings, but it's mostly mature forest.
And so the question on the table is what you can plant in that seed mix or other plantings that will actually survive in the shaded conditions.
Yeah,
And
yes, we could add probably some hemlock saplings to that.
And I think it would be worthwhile to consider a different seed mix or a custom seed mix that's specific to those kind of shaded wetland conditions as well.
Okay.
I don't think you're going to have very good success with a generic wet mix necessarily.
Okay, look at that.
North facing slope.
If they have it listed as New England wet mix.
Yeah. I suspect that New England Wetland Plants would be able to give you some advice and concoct a custom mix for that area. That would be my recommendation
Okay, we'll get in touch with
for
them.
where to get some input.
Mm-hmm.
So the other big issues are the in-stream impacts, which we have yet to assess. So Kathy, we need to identify someone to do an assessment of that. I don't know, did DEP have any recommendations?
So I reached out to DEP and I got it with that question and I got a response saying that he would get back to me. He's not yet gotten back to me. I can reach out to him again. I'm sorry I wasn't able to do it today, but in advance of the next meeting, certainly.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. The sooner we can act on that, the better. I guess we'll still have the further upstream as a control, so we'll be able to assess what has resolved or what the lasting impacts are, but I'd like to move on that sooner than later. If we can get some recommendations on who to reach out to. And then for the applicant, once we identify someone to do that assessment, we will be looking for, we'll get quotes for that and we'll be looking for the fee to be covered by the applicant to contract for that outside consultant expertise. Are you clear on that point?
Yes, I understand. Yep.
Okay. And then the other piece that we'll want in place is an independent environmental monitor who's not currently associated with the project to oversee the restoration work. And so likewise, I'm going to ask Cassie to reach out to a couple of firms and get numbers for that as well. Do you have an estimate, Ryan, of how long this work's going to take based on what you've proposed so far?
I would assume a few days.
Okay.
I don't know if legally the commission may be required to do an RFP. I'm not sure in this instance, since it's not a notice of intent, it's separate, but I think that the city would be hiring someone.
Yeah.
May be necessary, but it might depend on what the cost is. I can look into it, but it probably would be RFP is my guess.
Yeah, based on the enforcement manual, under the Wetlands Protection Act, we are not required to put it out to RFP.
Okay.
But I think it's something you need to run past procurement.
Mm-hmm.
And do we have an updated assessment of the volume of material we're talking about? You had told us before, just ballparking it, 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, 6 inches deep. What did you actually find when you did a closer look?
About, judging on the area we have here, it was probably about 75 cubic yards of material.
And what was that area? I think it was 4,000 something on the.
Yep, 4,245 square feet.
And so what does that work out to for depth?
So 4,245 times 0.5 and then divide by 27, you get 78.6 cubic yards.
So you're still comfortable with the 6 inch depth? That's what you're seeing and when you went and took a look?
Yeah, I think that's a conservative estimate because the perimeters, it kind of feathers out. So yes,
okay.
That's probably more than what's actually there.
Okay.
And you said it would take a few days, but did you say when you would be doing it? I know you said a dry time.
As soon as possible, pending, your guys' approval.
Do we have to wait for the monitor for them to do it?
We do. We want to have an independent monitor on site. So yes, we need to wait for that. And I think it would be ideal to know what the in-stream impacts look like so that if there's additional restoration work that needs to be done, we can revisit this plan before they go in and do one set of work. Is that Does that make sense to folks? Cassie, are you confident that it's fully stable at this point with the erosion controls that are in place?
Yes, since our last site visit, we went out there to look at it again, and I think other commissioners agreed with me that it looks stable, contained in that way of the additional setting.
Okay.
What is the, I'm just wondering, what does the BBW look like down there? Normally, is it thickly vegetated? What's the plant community? I'm just wondering if it makes sense just to try to get this.
That's why I was asking about the date, because it's just spring and things are trying to grow.
Brian, you did this delineation before the project, right?
Yep. So the understory doesn't really have much for a shrub layer. There's a handful here and there. It's mostly cinnamon fern and skunk cabbage.
All right, so there is buried stuff under there that's trying to come up.
And we did see some of the skunk cabbage trying to work their way through the settlement.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess I would also add that I feel as though Ryan and his team are responding adequately and are working to do the, best that they can to have this addressed. And I wouldn't necessarily think we needed to have an independent monitor as long as they are keeping their eyes on it. That may help things move along a little bit faster too.
Can the monitor look at it after the fact to monitor that they do what they said they were going to do and did it well?
How would they know what it was before?
Pictures.
Yeah, we could, if somebody's looking at the stream, we could have them look at the completed restored area and just see if they saw anything that appeared amiss.
Thoughts from the rest of the commission?
I agree with Dan.
They caused the violation. Whatever the commission thinks, I just like the extra guidance to make sure it's all taken care of.
But sooner might be better than
Sooner is
dragging it out
better.
for 6
Right.
weeks. That's all. That's, I guess, my only concern.
And what about, so we're having them do a seed mix, could they also do some cabbage and fern? So that was
The fern, yes, the skunk cabbage is virtually impossible, if not impossible to source.
Also hard to keep down.
Thoughts from the other end of the table?
I've only seen it once and this is a first for me, so I think I'm gonna pass.
Yeah. I guess the sooner the better. I can go either way with the monitor or not.
I have some public comments. One letter received from Garrett Stover on behalf of the Piscoma Conservation Trust, and I see here indicated that he would like to make a comment as well. Garrett, do you want me to read the letter first, or you want to speak first?
I don't have the letter in front of me, so go ahead, please.
Okay, cool. I will read it. Hold on a second, please. Sorry, just making my last note here. Okay, so this letter was received March 29th in 2023. Dear Commissioners, on behalf of Piscoma Conservation Trust, I would like to convey some questions and thoughts regarding the violation at 6973 Laville Road. As you are probably aware, during city reviews of the proposal, Piscoma raised strong, if not apparently legal substantive, objections to the scale and location of this development. We would much prefer to have been proved wrong in being so concerned. Unfortunately, this incident drives home some of the points we attempted to make. We are heartened to know that the Commission is in the process of drafting a local wetlands bylaw proposal. We hope that, to the extent legislation allows, that bylaw will provide additional safeguards against this sort of carelessness causing such severe damage ever again. Wider buffer areas separating development areas from sensitive resources, including isolated wetlands and intermittent streams, seem a good starting place. But if possible, the bylaw should also account for the unique topography and fragile and highly permeable soils of Easthampton, which this incident has demonstrated can compound damage beyond what in other environments might have been a minor incident. We also hope that, as the city has long pledged to do but not yet implemented, recognize productive Natural areas beyond those designated as priority habitat and potential habitat will be protected. Development planned on the other side of town has certainly sharpened awareness of the narrow reach of current protections. In reviewing the details of this violation, we do have several specific questions and concerns. 1, I thought I heard the builder indicate that the purpose of draining the detention basin was to enable its completion. If that is the case, why was the basin and other stormwater structure not completed prior to other site work commencing? 2, it seemed that the builder felt that draining the basin into the wetland would have been acceptable if no silt and sand had been present. We certainly hope that any transfer of water into natural areas which bypass the infiltration basin would be considered a violation. 3, the presence of a large amount of sand and silt in the basin suggests that measures being taken to stabilize soils on the site during construction are inadequate. 4, during review of the development proposal, Pascomic raised objections to the extremely long runs of stormwater drainage pipes. One of our concerns was how these would be maintained to ensure their function over the life of the development. While this incident certainly indicates they are quite efficient at transporting sediment, the volume present in the basin still means an inspection of the drainage system upstream of the basin for retained sediment and blockage may be in order. 5, is it the case that at this advanced stage of construction, the required inspections can be carried out by the builder without additional oversight? It is frightening to think that only the vigilance of a neighbor and diligence of the Conservation Commission staff prevented even more severe damage. 6, we are confident that the Commission will draw upon the appropriate resources in determining and implementing appropriate short-term and long-term remediation. But we are disturbed at the builder's suggestion that his company was competent to and intended to carry out work in such a sensitive area. We appreciate that the topography and conditions make removal of the sediment and remediation challenging. That is exactly why construction so close to fragile habitat should never take place. It is also why we hope that the Commission will confine any remedial work to contractors qualified to assess, work in, and protect such environments, including Hannah Brook itself. We sincerely thank the Commission and its staff for its sense of concern and urgency about this serious violation. We trust that all parties will do their best to remedy and repair, to the extent that is even possible, the damage this has caused to a place we treasure. Sincerely, Garrett Stover, Volunteer Conservation Advisor, Pascomic Conservation Trust. And Garrett, I don't know if you do have more to add in answer to that, or?
No, I just want to reiterate that I'm very nervous about a general contractor doing work in what is a really important habitat. And I thought I had written in the letter that I believe I sent you a map, Cassie, that shows that the biomap critical habitat extends up over the site that's being constructed, that's being developed. It just reinforces that this is an important wildlife and plant habitat area. Thank you.
Thanks, Garrett. It wasn't included, but I do have access to biomap and could provide that to the Commission, but I'm sorry, it wasn't included in your original email, as far as I can see this right now.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Garrett, can I ask your opinion on the balance between expediency of getting the material off of the existing surface versus the time that it may take to engage an independent monitor?
I empathize with you. It's a difficult trade-off to make. And I would defer to people that know more about when vegetation is emerging, the stability of the sediment in its current position. If we have a torrential rainstorm, is it going to make things worse if it's sitting there? But again, whether it's a volunteer, there are people in the city that know wetland habitats. Tom Latzenheiser earlier this evening, he certainly knows this. He's done restoration projects himself. with Mass Audubon. So with all due speed, try and get somebody out there. And again, I'm also concerned about the contractor doing the work down there. Thanks.
Show rock, paper, scissors.
How does the commission feel about, I don't even know if we can do this, but how would the commission feel about having a volunteer monitor from the Conservation Trust with interest in the property?
Islamic Trust.
Are you saying Garrett just volunteered himself?
Well, I think if I understood correctly, I think Garrett was saying that there probably could be a volunteer from PCT, whether it was not necessarily him, but that you were saying that you thought someone would be willing to play that role. Did I hear that correctly? Or was I?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of qualified people, not necessarily from Pascomic. Mass Audubon, probably the university, and it depends whether their concern about this sort of incident is enough to make them do it without a contract or on a short-term paid or unpaid basis. I'm definitely not qualified.
I guess the question would be like, what role would they play if they were volunteering? What kind of authority would they have or not have to interrupt the process?
Yeah, I as a volunteer would not insert myself into the middle of an enforcement action personally.
And if they need to be paid, then we're right back into the procurement process through the city. Entirely right.
Cassie, can you I think we need to decide on a series of potential actions that may hinge one on the other so that we can give you authority to make some decisions in lieu of waiting for the next meeting. But I think it would be worth finding out whether we have to go through a formal procurement process, which would delay us at least a few weeks, or if we can just hire someone.
Ryan, if we told you could start tomorrow, how soon before you could get that company up here?
Good question.
Carlos, do you know?
I would have to check in with the guy. I know he said he was about a week out when he was on site 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. So I would have to check with him and get back to you on, exactly how far out he is.
All right, thanks. It's just to try to help us do the right planning on our end, that's all. I mean, if he can't get here for 6 weeks, that kind of gives us time to do other things.
Can you call Cassie with that information?
Yeah, I could, as soon as I talk to him in the morning, or if he responds to an email from me tonight, I can email or call Cassie tomorrow morning.
Great, okay. So Cassie's gonna find out if we can hire someone directly, which we are able to do under the enforcement handbook, but I don't know if the city will allow that. It may hinge on the amount. If we're only talking about a couple of days, I would think that we should be able to stay under probably any of the target thresholds that may apply.
This is Ryan. I have one question when you get a second, not to interrupt.
Go ahead, that's fine.
Were you referring to, I couldn't catch the name of the gentleman that spoke. What committee or commission was it?
Garrett was speaking on behalf of the Pascomic Conservation Trust.
Okay. I'm just a little confused as to if someone has a personal interest in voicing their concern at the committee, how would that be an independent monitor? That seems, if any, is equally potentially biased as who worked on the project. I'm not to discredit Garrett or anything. I just don't see how that's any more independent.
Well, A, we've moved on from the idea of a volunteer monitor, but B, you're talking about a developer versus a conservation trust that operates in the city to protect our natural resources. So I think there's a very different bias that we're looking for.
Yeah, I wasn't advocating myself or a developer. I'm just saying anyone in general. That's all. I'm just putting it out there.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize we moved on from the volunteer option. And was the reason because of the question of authority or like?
Yeah, I think it doesn't work.
Okay.
Didn't have really anyone
For a variety of reasons.
concrete.
Okay. That's good to know. So my focus will be talking to the procurement officer about
Yes.
the other things. Because I was thinking about asking the volunteer, but
Yeah.
okay. Sorry, thank you.
Do we know who we want to call if Cassie is able to hire someone directly? The first company that comes to mind that I know would be qualified would be SWCA's Ecological Restoration Group and Scott Fisher.
I wouldn't know.
I don't know.
Any other thoughts, Dan? Can you think of anybody?
Emily Stockman, but she's just,
Yeah,
Buried.
Emily Stockman.
She's buried though, I'm sure.
yeah.
You know someone?
Smaller,
Can make that joke.
other smaller ones, I know Wendell Wetland Services, I think you said them for him. Wordsmith, if you're familiar. I haven't done much of this work, but it's only smaller.
Wordsmith is who did the delineation for the school, correct? I think you're the right place.
Oh, really? Maybe. I don't know.
I believe so.
It's Wendell
Does
Wetland
anybody
Services.
remember?
Nope, I don't remember that
I
name.
think he did the wetland delineation. This is a different property altogether, but for Coleman Road, that was half in Southampton, if you remember that one?
Oh, yeah, the, storage.
Yeah.
Yes, the
Yeah.
storage place.
Um,
And then all you can think of is SWCA, they do restoration work and,
Yeah, that was the first one I mentioned.
oh my God, sorry. Oh, Scott Fisher.
Yeah, I think Wordsmith would be fine also. So those three, I think, would be, would all be companies that I would be comfortable reaching out to if we're able to contact directly.
And we should just get notice before they start also.
Yes.
Just 48-hour notice.
Okay, so if the procurement officer tells me that the commission does not need to go through the RFP process to hire a person, I will then just immediately reach out to those three firms
Yes.
and let you all know what quotes I get back for the work. Their work will include monitoring the removal process of the accumulated sediment as it's been described previously in this meeting.
Mhm.
And then also, would they be doing the in-stream assessment, or I'm waiting to get information? from
We need to
DEP?
wait to,
Okay.
I don't know who to call for that.
Would their monitoring include post completion of the work to make sure just for that sediment removal area and the slope redevelopment?
For the slope also, I guess.
you know, Stantec has some of the better river people around.
So that would be separate.
Right in Northampton.
For the assessment side?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not familiar with their stuff.
I don't know if they could also do
So I guess
the independent monitoring of the wetland restoration too.
what I want to know is, once the work is completed, there will be presumably some kind of monitoring period afterwards to make sure that the planting is successful.
Yeah,
Would that be included in their work, or would that be the stream person?
I think at this point, our goal is to get the sediment off of the wetland surface as fast as possible.
Mhm.
And I think it makes sense to focus on an independent monitor who can watch that process proceed. And then that gives us a little time to deal with the other pieces and figure out what other sort of long-term monitoring of the restoration plantings might be needed, the aquatic habitat assessment, et cetera.
Okay, I think I understand. And what I'll likely do is tomorrow craft you my request and just check with you as the chair, if that makes sense.
Okay.
If that's amenable to the rest of the commission to kind of just expedite it that way, so that you can see the draft of what I'm gonna request of these people.
That's fine with me if everyone else is
Yep,
comfortable with that.
that's good.
Okay. For the purpose of the applicant, I want to make sure you understand that we're talking about sort of a phased approach here and looking at getting the cleanup, for lack of a better term, handled first. But that will not be the extent of the restoration that we're looking for, that then we'll want to talk about potentially, well, let's come back to the question of plantings, whether we want them to move forward. I'm changing direction for a second. Do we want, because we asked Ryan to look into some other options around plantings and all of that. Do we want to have the first piece just be getting the sediment taken out, and then have them deal with the slope restoration, the plantings,
Sure,
all of that a little bit later.
sure. So yes, we can get that started.
Okay, all right.
I see.
So is that clear to the applicant?
So we have the go-ahead to remove the sediment? Is that my understanding?
You do not have to go ahead to remove the sediment. We want to know what the timeline is for your back truck contractor. Cassie's going to be looking into whether we can hire an independent monitor directly without going through an RFP process, which would delay us. But what we're wanting to do is to move forward with that piece alone, the back truck operation, first as phase one. And then we've asked you for additional information on the plantings and the slope stabilization. We know that we need to do a habitat assessment of the in-stream impacts. And so all of that would be a second phase, which is coming, that we're going to be expecting, that's not fully defined yet.
Understood. Okay.
So the work can't start until I've confirmed that we've hired a monitor for that sediment removal work.
Correct.
Then we'll come back for phase two, which is everything else.
Correct. And the contingency, what do we want to be our contingency if Cassie is told by procurement that we can't hire someone without going through an RFP process?
Cassie, what you doing next week?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was just gonna wonder if any of us could be part of the monitoring with Kathy.
That could be our backup
We
plan.
could try to manage some site visit people to, maybe be there when they first start the process to see what it looks like and make sure it doesn't look crazy.
I would certainly be willing to do the monitoring. I would have to, hopefully we could develop like a set schedule together, but it might be that I would need help from commissioners
That's
as well,
correct.
unfortunately.
So let's have that be the backup plan so we can move this along.
Or if we had somebody like who's too busy, like Emily Stockton, I wonder if she could give us a list of like 10 things to look for to make sure.
The question is a procurement one. I think that we'll be able to get one of these firms if we are allowed to hire them directly. Okay, is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah, just so we're clear for plantings, I'm thinking that when we get that material off the BBW, that's not what is planted, it's the slope that was eroded when that's fixed and then the access path down. But we'll know more once the sediment's off.
Yeah.
If that's coming back.
Hopefully, when we let the sediment off, we're gonna see all that skunk cabbage and fern coming up, and we won't need to do anything because it will look as though no one was ever there.
Right.
That's what we're gonna aim for. If that's not the case, then we'll need to revisit what else may need to happen to restore that area vegetation wise.
So phase one, just sediment removal,
Correct.
not slope work, not plantings. We're going to revisit for that.
Correct. Okay. Kathy, can you memorialize that two-phase approach in a quick memo to the applicant and get that out tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right, so just to recap, 2 phases. We're going to send you a memo to clarify that. You're going to get back to us on a timeline for the back truck operation. Cassie is going to look into the independent monitor as a backup if we're not able to hire someone directly. And your vacuum truck operation is able to be done rapidly, then we're going to orchestrate commission, volunteers, and Cassie to oversee at least a portion so that we're comfortable with the approach and the work being done.
Process, yeah.
We are going to be getting names for someone to do the in-stream habitat assessment. And you're going to be getting us the additional information that was requested for the slope stabilization and plantings. And we will revisit all of those elements as phase 2 of the corrective action once we have that additional information from those different sources. Did I miss anything?
Those trees or the area you said that was gonna get.
Yes, and Ryan, you're also going to get us ASAP before any work can happen. You're going to quantify for us the species number and DBH of any trees or any other substantial shrubs or woody vegetation that's going to be disrupted along the access path.
Yes.
And the square footage and the slope.
And the percent slope, yes, and the square footage of that access area. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I think we're good. Question, yeah.
In the, short-term erosion control maintenance, number 4, number 6, where it says they'll inspect once every 7 calendar days and after any storm event, greater than 0.5 inches. Don't we usually have a lesser amount, or is that?
It should be anytime there's a 1/4 inch of rain, right?
Okay. That's what I thought. It said 0.5.
Which number do you mean?
Number 4, under short-term erosion control maintenance.
I don't have the same thing you're looking at. Oh, you're on the restoration.
Oh, yeah.
plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my files, and then
Yeah.
we'll fold it up in there.
This is why I read them.
Probably is right there.
And number 6, is your.
So we want it to be a 1/4 inch rain event.
Yes.
We do want it to be a 1/4 inch rain event. Also, I think that we'll be looking again at this plan, and it will potentially be a different plan once we revisit the slope stabilization plantings. So I don't think we need to get this perfect just this minute. But yes, and it should be a 1/4 inch rain event for inspections.
In number 6, it says that the possibility they would keep the sediment on site.
Yeah, well, I assume if they're putting the material in a back truck, it will be disposed of off-site, correct?
I don't see, it's not contaminated. I mean, I don't know what Carlos's plan was with it, but it's an active construction site. I'm sure it can be used somewhere.
The plan was to keep it moving would be to pump it up into the truck, pile it up in the corner that's not near anything, and then go back and pump up some more of it because it can only pump up a certain amount of yards at a time.
Gotcha, right.
Yeah, so
You've
they
got
wanna
far
dump-
more yards than will fit in your
Yeah,
truck.
they want to dump it on site.
So where is that proposed location?
It would be where unit, what's the single unit that's not constructed yet. I think that's number
16?
15, correct. So I'll probably end up digging a little bit of a hole just that way, keep everything, into that hole with the silt fence surrounding it.
So that would put it as close as any building to the infiltration basin that it just came out of.
Yep.
That seems like it could be problematic.
There's really no other spot. Well, I guess we're making room where 17 and 18 go. Like I was saying, I was gonna dig a hole that way. It's not, I don't know how dry or wet it's gonna come out, but if we had silt fence encircling a hole that we're gonna dump it into, I would think we'd be maintaining it pretty well. So we can try to put it over 17, 18.
I don't know where 17 is. Up here, okay.
Yeah. Thoughts from the commission?
Well, there's a huge dirt pile over here anyways already, topsoil, stockpiles,
Yep.
topsoil. So as long as it's contained, I don't have a problem with it.
All right, so
Planted.
it needs to be encircled by a towed-in silt fence.
Yep.
It needs to be seated and stabilized if it's going to be sitting there for more than 7 days after the vac truck operation.
Okay.
And then we want to hear an update on where it's going to wind up, since I'm presuming it's not going to stay in that location long term.
No, there'll be a building there, so no.
Right. And so we'll want to know what your plan is for dealing with it.
Good chance it'll be hauled off into the yard, to our yard in Ludlow.
So it probably will get trucked off site ultimately.
Yes, because then, we could give it a little bit of time to dry, because like I said, I think it's going to come out, I don't think it's going to come out totally dry until we really see it. We won't
Great.
know, but I don't want to be slopping it in a truck if it's
Okay.
all muddy.
That sounds great. I'm fully comfortable with that. So we'll stockpile it in that location. It'll be protected. If it's gonna sit there for more than a week, it'll get seeded and it will ultimately be removed off site.
Yes.
Great, good. Anything else tonight?
Not from this topic.
Not for this one.
All right. Then we all have our instructions to move that forward. And hopefully Cassie will be making the decision to hire someone ASAP. And Cassie, you'll just want to coordinate with procurement and the applicant on how they need to put their money into whatever fund it needs to go into to pay for that.
Yeah, we would likely put it in escrow, which is the
Great.
process we've done before.
Yeah, so, okay. And they may even be able to use the account that's already open for their stormwater bond or something. I don't know how that works, but
Possibly, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
It'll be done right.
excellent. All right, thank you. And I think regardless of what happens in the interim, we will see you again on April 24th to talk about the next steps.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Good night.
Night.
All right, where are we?
I have to ask for an item out of order.
Please.
Okay.
Wait very patiently. Which item are you here for?
Many pictures from.
Yes. Request that we take item 9B out of agenda order.
All right, 9B, possible violation at 10 Industrial Parkway. Do we have a motion?
Motion to take 9B out of order.
Second.
All those in favor,
Aye.
Patrick, Ryan,
Aye.
August, Weeks,
Aye.
Whittemore, Carr.
Aye.
Motion carries. How can we help you? What's the situation at 10 Industrial Parkway?
Okay, if I can I give an explanation?
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Deeks, you're the
Yes.
owner of the
Yep, David
property,
Deeks.
excuse me, David Deeks. So it's 10 Industrial Parkway. We'd received a notification that some clearing work had happened, within that area and some ground disturbance. That had implications for the planning, board as well as, the Conservation Commission potentially. So Eli Block of the planning board and myself did a site visit after contacting Mr. Dietz. And for the commission's purposes, looks like potentially some clearing has happened within the 100-foot buffer zone associated with the stream that's there. I'm very confident that the stream is in fact intermittent. The commission completed an RDA for 3540 O'Neill Street not too long ago. I can pull up when it was exactly, which found that to be intermittent. That stream back there, and that's just across the stream. Is that
Where,
property.
Cassie, just where are we? What would that property on O'Neill Street be?
It's 3540 O'Neill Street. It is some kind of industrial thing. Let me pull it up. I have
Yeah,
pictures and stuff.
it would be helpful to remember what we were looking at before.
Yep. And again, the main point of that was the study was intermittent,
Yep.
not, I believe in perennial stream because of that assessment. So I have the file here from 35.
And 10 Industrial Parkway is towards the circle on the south side. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yes, this would be on the, on Industrial Drive. I would
Yeah.
actually call it east side.
You're right. Yeah,
East side.
my cardinal directions
Yes.
are a little.
And it's our butters two products on the other side of the street.
Okay.
Yeah. So 10 Industrial Parkway, you can see on this picture here, is from Mass Mapper. So
Yeah.
here's 10 Industrial Parkway, kind of going on the corner of the screen here. Here's Mr. Dietz's property. He's working on changing, right, the property line to
Yes.
include this area.
Yes.
Because you own this parcel as well. I guess to the south. And you were looking to, it's all cleared here. Are you looking to expand that clearing along the same footprint essentially? Or, no, sorry, how far does it back?
Actually, I just came in front of the planning board. We had purchased this piece
Yeah,
right here and squared that off.
okay,
And we were clearing this piece, and this is the stream.
Yeah.
Their intermittent stream down here that we're referring to.
so when I did the site visit, and I can show, I have one that's aerial imagery that can show you more better the footprint, but this is just helpful because it shows you the slope here slightly with the shading. I just measured with my measuring tape, 100 feet from the top of the slope out. So of where that area is, and it appears like some clearing happened just like beyond that 100 feet. It would be better in my site visit pictures that I'll show in a second. So, let's see here.
So I'm sorry, point of clarification. Your property is which one?
These are both our properties. So this is our property, this is our property. We have just purchased a rectangle right here from our butter.
Okay. And the potential violation is on
It's on the new piece of property that we just
Yeah.
purchased.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm calling it 10, but I guess it's gonna become 10, a part of
Yeah,
it.
it hasn't been. It
already has.
always gone.
Okay, but on this map, it appears to be 8.
Yes, this is.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
That's helpful.
Apologies, yeah, this is an old
Gotcha.
from Mass Mapper.
Okay.
So hold on. Okay, so let me go to the next picture here because it shows you kind of the aerial imagery. So you can see the extent so here's Mr. Dietz's property number 10. That's the main building and the yard is here. And then currently the yard extends to this point here. Sorry, you can probably barely see my cursor, but essentially where that clearing is, and that you kind of tried to clear in line with that. Was that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we were clearing this square right here that we had recently purchased from the Chilsons.
Yeah. And the clearing that you did not go up to the top of the slope.
No, we stayed away from it. The slope, it literally drops down 25 feet to the bottom of the park. And when my guys, when the crew was out there, they measured it, and we were trying to be 100 feet away from it. And they were, I think, a little laxed in going down into the slope, going down and measuring it. So when they were clearing, we're maybe 10 feet over the 100-foot buffer zone area.
Yeah, so let me pull you up what I got here. These pictures are all from like the more farther away outside of the jurisdictional area as I assessed it, which is not an official delineation. Again, I just measured it with the tape from the top of the slope there. Let's see, kind of spinning around. Let's see. Okay, approaching the end. Okay, and so you had established a silt fencing, but for my estimate, where you thought the 100-foot buffer zone ended, and then you did some like repair here, it sounds like you kind of like filled.
Yes, we definitely, when I noticed that they had cut too far, we padded it in. We didn't do any grading on that property. The forest stuff is still there, but yes, we did cut, the trees past that point.
So then I measured from where I thought the top of the slope was over, and I measured, that the 100-foot was even farther up. So the silt fencing was potentially not marking the 100-foot boundary. So you'll see I have a picture here of the tape. Let's see here.
But just remember, Eli didn't go down the embed. So he was at the very top of it in there. So we've, since that time, measured to make sure that we're on the 100-foot, and I do think we are at the 100 feet from whatever high water mark.
Okay, so yes, when I put this, you can see the tape measure here.
Yes.
When I was out there, like you described, I just had Eli help me. He stood at the very top of the slope before it started going down and held the tape measure there. So this is where this to me is 100 feet out from that point where the end of the tape is. And I guess it's up to the commission to determine if they feel like that from the tape back is what needs to be restored, or it sounds like in your measurement, it should be where the silt fencing is.
Yeah, and this is interim because we are, when we first bought this property right in front of the planning board, and we have this put onto our property that we already have a special permit and a stormwater permit for. And I thought that would be enough just connecting these pieces. But Eli is explaining to me that no, we actually have to do a plan and do a stormwater for the separate piece. And we are in the process of that. And when we do that, our intentions are to stay 110 feet away from the wetland. Our intentions are not to do any use up to that wetland. So we could revegetate that now. It's not an area we're ever going up to again.
Okay. That seems like a pretty straightforward solution to get some trees and shrubs back into that area. Thoughts, questions, comments?
I was just gonna ask the question, how would you characterize what was removed?
Yeah, so up here, this land was cleared probably 25 years ago, well before we owned it.
Okay.
And so we had very young growth. It's about 20 feet higher in elevation than the wetland. It's very sandy. So it was mostly pine. You can see the saplings, in there. So, it would all be upland. We would, plant probably some maples, some pines.
Okay.
And the area we're talking is 100 feet by, we can double check, but 12 feet wide to 20 foot wide, depending on how we exactly measure that too.
Yeah, so, but comparable numbers and
yes,
rough species composition. Okay, thank you.
And how far back are we from where the slope gets steep?
The slope, we're about 70 feet, then the slope goes steep for the last 20 feet down into the stream. It's literally a 1-to-1 slope going right down into that stream. Yeah. And ultimately, what I think we're gonna do in our stormwater is, on our previous property, they have to build up the land, so we stop any runoff from going over that embankment and destabilizing that slope. And I'm sure, Mark Reed did the last plan for us. He's doing this one. It's gonna be something similar to protecting that runoff water from destabilizing that slope.
Okay. And where are you in that process? When are you expecting to put those practices in place?
Just talking with them, just beginning to talk with them now.
Okay.
And they are very behind. And I told them this project, we're not planning any immediate expansion to it. We bought the property for future expansion.
Okay. So as far as erosion goes, it seems like, and Cassie, you've seen it, I have not, but it seems like potentially a straw wattle might be in order along there.
Like along the tree line?
Or there's already the silt fence, right?
Yeah.
But do we need anything closer to the bank? Because
Yeah, we could go.
It looks disturbed.
Closer to the disturbance along this.
Right.
You can see the natural duff is still there.
Yep.
But we could put something additionally there.
Maybe just a straw wattle would be
Right,
enough.
yeah, with the silt fence already there to catch anything coming from further away, I think a secondary straw wattle at right beyond the disturbance line to manage that secondary area would be good. It seems like this is gonna be a very sunny spot.
Yes.
So, in addition to putting back some trees, which are gonna take time to mature, you said it's very sandy. I would think that, sweet fern would actually potentially do really well here, and that would help to send out roots that are gonna anchor that surface. So if we could look at doing, some sweet fern in addition to whatever tree planting makes sense to replicate what was removed.
Yep.
I think that would be an expedient way to get some stabilization of that area pretty quickly.
Okay, and then what would be the timeline to do this?
Nurseries are gonna start to open in a couple weeks, so if we could get stuff in.
Yeah, we can have it done in, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks. We can have it easily completed and have you come back and look at it.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so what I could do, we've got issued an enforcement order for this, but what I was planning to do would to hear what you guys wanted for restoration and then just write a letter that explained that. So it sounds like that makes sense.
Yeah, we
do
can
it
be
that
fine
way.
with that. Yeah.
Okay, so then the letter will just say like, you know, don't do any work out there and then kind of reiterate what the commission just said with they want for restoration. Okay.
Is everyone comfortable with that?
I am.
Yes. Yep.
All right, great.
Okay. Wow.
your hand slap involved sitting here for 3 hours.
Yeah, that's it. That was
Next time it'll be 6.
I can't.
4 hours.
I did it when I realized that was half the night.
It's 9:31.
Yeah. All right, so let's return to item 7. Hopefully there are no open space updates that we need to talk about tonight.
Nothing highlighted.
Excellent.
I have a motion, I think.
Related to,
Not yet.
are there compliance updates, Kathy?
The only update I have is for item I, for the Easthampton School Committee, just noting that I did a site visit on the 30th of March. And I took pictures, which can be found there. The note being that they're still doing, Jay and Sarah were in attendance. And they still need to do the updated landscaping for things that failed last season, and they're working on that probably now. And then the stormwater system is not complete, and especially in terms of the basin and the re.
Right.
So we're still talking to them on it. That's the main update.
Okay, great.
And otherwise I do not have any other updates for other ongoing projects.
Okay. Meeting minutes, do we have March 13th and 27th before us? I can't remember.
Somewhere we have them.
13, 30, 27, Deb reviewed and gave me corrections, which I implemented as corrections.
I trust Deb's correct.
Yes.
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for March 13th and March 27th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, Buttrick?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
August?
Aye.
Weeks?
Aye.
Whittemore?
Aye.
Carr?
Aye.
Motion carries. I'd like to point out that you may have noticed it's always someone different whose name I forget. Oh, we go around every time. Every time.
All right.
You haven't got one yet.
I have no memory of what we said we were going to discuss relative to the wetlands ordinance, but I am going to vote that we skip that
My
for
only
tonight.
question, do you think you can do the 19th or no? Remember that was when our next meeting.
I
date was.
cannot.
Cannot, okay.
I will be in the field on overnight.
This is overnight, just pretty soon, 3 years goes by.
I know.
We were working on that.
So let's see if we can find a new meeting date for that.
We can get it done tonight. Come on.
Order pizza.
My kids are in bed now, so I can just stay as long as I want.
So I know we were looking at that date because there were other things coming up before then. So what's going on the week of the 24th? We have our meeting on Monday. And this really only needs to involve the working group, but everyone else is welcome to check their calendars too if you'd like. I could potentially do any other evening that week if pressed. Or I could do Monday the 1st potentially, although I'm gonna regret saying that later. Kathy, were you away the week of the 24th or something? I feel like there was a reason we were avoiding that week, or maybe it was just that we wanted to do it before the next.
I think that was the reason. I'm not away the week of the 24th. I'm good to go any evening. My schedule's quite flexible right now as it is for that week, except for a meeting, obviously. And then that is also the case for the week of the 1st.
And the 17th is Patriots Day, so that's why we ruled that out.
Correct.
Okay. So if I can't do 18, 19, or 20. So what is the?
I think you guys work on it.
Yeah, we should be. The meeting's not adjourned. So we're still
not,
recording.
okay.
Yes, we never have not yet adjourned.
I guess we could adjourn. We can just figure this out.
Okay.
I know,
It doesn't need to be a big thing.
I'll email you. The other update I have is that I reached out to Garrett about participating in our process. Very, it was really nice of them. He reached out to Tom Lattenhauser and Tom said he'd probably be able to join us on the 19th, but he would wait to see what we figured out as the date.
Okay.
So
Great.
let me know
Then
when you
let's
can,
do an
so.
email
Yeah.
to revisit with him included
Okay.
and find a new date. And that, just to bring everyone else into the loop, we decided to reach out and see if PCT had someone that could become part of the working group to have some additional input on some of the habitat protection pieces and the performance standards that we're trying to think about.
And depending on the schedule, I don't know that he could come to every single one going
Right.
forward, but even just one would be helpful.
Yeah, any input we could get, we thought would be valuable.
And there'll be more wider input sought later in the process as well.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So with that, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Have a second. Patrick.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
August. Weeks.
Aye.
Whittemore. Carr. It is 9:36, which might be a new record, and we are adjourning the April 10th meeting of the Easthampton Conservation Commission. We will, our next meeting will be April 24th at 6 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.